If he breathes, the bear will see him. Lying flat on his stomach, the boy has no choice but to watch as the hulking brute eats his father before his very eyes. Lying in the thicket just a few trees away, the boy knows that any small movement he makes could prove fatal. A bear this large, hunting for its hibernation, will have no issue chasing him down in a split second and doing exactly what it did to his father, to him. The boy is utterly powerless. All he can do is stay deathly still and watch. They'd found the tracks too late. On the way back to camp, they'd been following the wooded cliff that lines the ocean's edge. Bows and salmon slung over their shoulders, they'd been so proud of their catch and the prospect of bringing it back to the tribe that they hadn't kept their wits about them. By the time they'd seen the enormous prints in the dirt, the sound of lumbering footsteps were already echoing through the trees behind them. The boy's bow is too far out of reach. He dropped it when his father pushed him into the thicket. He's got the knife hanging at his side, but he doubts it's long enough to even get through the bear's fatty hide. In contrast, the only thing protecting him from its bite is the leather hide slung across his shoulders and a woven garment from the tribe's elders. One slash of the bear's claw, and he'd be. A breeze ruffles his hair. The boy's eyes widen in horror. That wind hadn't come from in front of him, but from behind, blowing his scent, his fear, directly towards the bear's nostrils. The boy plants his muddy palms into the dirt, staring at the animal. Its nostril twitches, then twitches again. It half turns its head, sniffing the air. Maybe it won't bother with him. The bear's turning back to its meal already. The boy lets out a sigh of relief, and a twig snaps. The bear snarls and whips its head around. For a second, the two of them lock eyes, predator and prey. Then the boy takes off running. Fast as he can, he leaps through the undergrowth, ferns and nettles whipping at his shins. He fumbles the knife out of its sheath and slings the water skin off his shoulder, throwing it wildly behind him. He doesn't know if he hit the bear. He doesn't have time to turn around and see. It's going to be on him in an instant. Up ahead, he sees sunlight streaming through the thick trees, the cliff edge. If he can just get to that, maybe he can climb down and... No, there's no time. Besides, bears are better climbers, better swimmers, better runners. All the boy can hope for is that he's a better jumper. Him and the boys from the tribe have leapt off plenty of cliffs along the shore, but never these ones. There are too many rocks, too many shallows. But the thundering of four enormous paws behind him is looming larger and larger. He can almost feel the bear's hot breath on the back of his neck. There's nothing for it. Here goes. The trees clear, the sun blasts his skin, a claw slashes at his back, and the boy launches himself into the air. The wind carries him. The weightlessness of wheeling his arms and legs through the empty sky is almost enough to make him laugh with joy, until the boy looks down. The cliff is higher, much, much higher than he'd realized. His momentum carries his torso forwards into a tumble. He's not going to land straight, and he can see jagged rocks everywhere beneath him. The boy closes his eyes and crashes into the sea. All of the air is slammed out of his lungs. His knee hits something hard and sharp in the water. A swell throws him away from the shore and pulls him deep. Without air in his chest, he can't float. Kicking hard as he can, the boy swims upwards, eyes still screwed shut. His face bashes into a sandy rock. No, that's not upwards. Which way is it? Which way should he swim? The ocean current rolls him over and over. Darkness fills his mind. But his feet find a hard surface, and he pushes against it, launching himself through the water, kicking as hard as he can. The darkness fades. Light. The boy's head breaches the water, and he splutters for air, rubbing the water out of his eyes. He looks around wildly. The sea has carried him away from the cliff and out into open water. It's lifting and dropping him with each wave, carrying him this way and that, like a flower in the wind. And there, traversing the cliff face, scrambling down the rocks, is the bear. The boy's stomach turns. It reaches the bottom of the cliff and sees him there in the water. Tipping back its head, it roars at an almighty volume, deafening the boy over the sound of the waters. Even from this distance, the animal looks impossibly large. It dwarfs the boulders that line the water's edge. It slips into the water, barely making a ripple, and kicks off from the shore. Going straight for him, the bear is covering the distance so fast, he only has seconds left. With barely the strength to keep himself afloat, the boy knows he'll never be able to outswim this creature. Instead, he takes a deep breath and looks up at the woods, remembering all of the happy moments he'd spent in there with his father. A current swells beneath the boy and almost throws him out of the water. An enormous shadow flies through the depth beneath him. A whale? It couldn't be. Whatever it is, the shadow is swimming straight at the advancing bear. So fixated on its prey, the bear doesn't even notice what's approaching until it's too late. The ocean explodes. A blast of water as tall as the cliffs themselves shoots up into the air and showers the boy's head. Somewhere in the midst of the spray, a monster erupts from the depths. Snapping its jaw around the bear, it lifts the animal into the air and throws it against the cliff. The impact is so strong that a small landslide follows the bear's rolling body as it tumbles back towards the water. But the boy has eyes only for the monster emerging from the sea. Crawling up the rocks with one gnarled foot after another, the boy can hardly make sense of what he's looking at. It seems to have some kind of scaly hide, harder than the rocks surrounding it. A wave crashes against the monster as it leers over the bear and sinks its teeth into the animal's hide. Unable to look away, the boy kicks out and starts swimming away up the coast. Only once he's a long way around the bay does he dare to clamber out and back onto land. That night, once the rest of the tribe have gone to sleep, the boy can't help but lie wide awake in his tent. Without his father here, it's not the same. Quietly rolling up the hide doorway, the boy slips out into the night. They're camped by a small cave with beautiful smooth walls inside. They say it's the cave of their ancestors, the place where all life started. The fire in the cave has to always burn. Fortunately for him, the cave is empty. The boy stares up at the wall in wonder. Finger drawings of animals, hunters, mothers, shamans, gods, and forests fill almost every part of it. Only one space remains in the corner, a finger painting of the rocky cliffs with the swelling sea beneath. Dipping his finger into the paint, the boy sits by the wall and starts to paint. A terrible monster crawling out of the sea, with a scaly hide stronger than any rock. That's it. You know that from just some finger painting. The archaeologist turns to the group of researchers surrounding him in the cave. UV lights are set up all along the walls, with the blue and violet shapes revealed all across the stonework. The archaeologist can't help but empathize with the spiritualism of their long-forgotten ancestors who'd lived in these caves thousands of years ago. The professor was the one who asked the question, a cold woman, standing well over 6 feet tall with a crop of fiery ginger hair. To him, she seems less of a scientist and more of a military leader. But what does he know? "Walk with me," she says and leads him out of the cave. Personnel fills the surrounding area. Most of them are armed. Cranes lift huge sheets of reinforced lead plating into place. Several mysterious vats line the edge of the forest, each adorned with more warning and hazard signs than you'd see in a nuclear power station. The two of them have to pause for a moment as 3 tanks roll past them. The archaeologist breaks the silence. "You know the reason I started all my research in the first place? Did I ever tell you that story? Every early civilization in the world, whether it's ancient China, Mesopotamia, South America, Northern Europe, all these cultures, you take a look at their mythology and what do you find?" The professor ignores him, instead choosing to bark orders at a group of agents talking over coffee. They all immediately dump their drinks and get back to work. What one thing do they all talk about, even though it never existed? Dragons. All these disparate people with no contact with one another, all of them still draw pictures of dragons. The professor stops walking at the edge of the cliff. The pair of them stand there, surveying the vast ocean stretching out in front of them, as researchers, agents, and workers rush around behind them. After a long pause, the professor asks him to proceed. In ancient Hebrew texts, when they talk about God creating the world in 7 days, what happens on day 5? The professor flicks the hair out of her eyes and replies curtly, "God created fish in the sea and birds in the sky." Well, not exactly. Look at the original Hebrew. He created all of the fish that teem in the sea, sure, but he also created Leviathan, a serpent-like monster from the depths, as old as the world itself. You think that's what we're dealing with? Maybe. Or something worse. By nightfall, preparations are operational. Enormous floodlights switch on, one after another, illuminating an enormous steel box with an open lid at the top, surrounded by armed agents, huge net launchers, and several tanks. It all seems a bit excessive as far as the archaeologist is concerned. He isn't officially still supposed to be here, but in all the scramble for the Foundation to get the capture site ready, no one noticed that he had stuck around. From the viewing platform several hundred meters away, he has to watch it all unfold through a pair of binoculars. Out above the water, suspended from one of the cranes, is an elephant carcass. The professor told him that the Foundation had even marinated it for extra flavor. He had only been recruited into this project a couple of months ago, but from what he could tell, it's been an ongoing priority for the Foundation for several years now. The scale of the operation of just setting up at this site is already mind-boggling, but they've been chasing up leads like this for years now. Arriving at scenes, they suspect this creature has been sighted in the past and setting up traps for it. He was only brought in out of desperation. The Foundation had exhausted all recent hunting grounds and was trying to cast the net even wider. He'd just been quietly working on his university research paper about ancient reptile drawings when the agents had let themselves into his office. But staring through his binoculars now, the archaeologist knows there's no chance of this operation actually working. They have floodlights, for crying out loud. No intelligent predator would come anywhere near that elephant carcass. Movement. Not in the waters or any of the lit-up areas. No, there's something in the forest line, just behind a group of researchers. He reaches instinctively for his walkie-talkie, then stops himself. How many times had he got jittery before and reported something preemptively? The agents already don't take him seriously as it is. He can't be jumping at shadows. But there it is again, a shape moving fast through the trees. He scans the binoculars this way and that, trying to find it. Just a group of researchers there, some agents there, supply crates, researchers, agents. Wait, weren't there more of them a second ago? He looks closer. Someone's gone missing. He clicks on the radio. South Lookout Team, report in. Nothing. South Lookout Team? A sickening feeling settles in his stomach. With all those bright lights everywhere, they're casting a lot of dark shadows. He has to do something fast. Running down from the lookout point, the archaeologist takes off running through the trees to the site. He holds his radio up to his mouth as he goes, trying to get anyone to respond. But it's hopeless. The thicket cracks and crunches under his feet as he tries to make his way through the dark woods, ignoring the feeling that crawls up his neck of being watched. A boulder blocks his way. The archaeologist grabs onto it with both hands and hauls himself on top of it, stopping for a moment to catch his breath. From up here, he can see the floodlit capture site. The tanks and cranes still sit rumbling, ready to go at a moment's notice, but he can't see any ground crew anymore. He switches the radio to the open channel and calls out for anyone to respond. The professor's voice crackles back at him.
What are you still doing here? This is a highly dangerous operation that you don't have clearance for.
He yells at her to cancel it. They need to evacuate the site immediately. It's compromised. She laughs derisively and cuts off the channel. No, she has to believe him. People are dying, and more of them will if she doesn't. The archaeologist whispers to himself in the darkness. It's no monster. It's just an innocent creature. You're playing with a power you don't understand. It's strange. For a moment, he swears he almost hears a voice whispering something back to him in the woods. But when he looks around, he's all on his own. He has to keep moving. The creature could be anywhere. Hopping off the jagged boulder, the archaeologist takes off running through the forest once more, looking over his shoulder every few steps. The light must be playing tricks on him. In the darkness, he can't see the boulder he was standing on a moment ago anywhere. He bursts out of the tree line and into the clearing right next to the steel box. A ramp leads up to the top of it, with a large trap door suspended over the open lid. Well, if he wants to be seen and heard, that's where he needs to go. The archaeologist runs up the ramp and waves his hands wildly in the air. The tanks all turn their turrets to aim at him. The crane holding the enormous steel lid for the enclosure looms menacingly above his head. And there, marching out onto the field, looking absolutely furious, is the professor. Her red hair looks more like a ball of flames right now. We need to evacuate the site now! It's here! She snarls and marches up the ramp to meet him, jabbing a finger in the archaeologist's face. He suddenly realizes how much taller she is. You are not jeopardizing our one chance of catching this thing. Get out of the way, or I will have you detained. Besides, what evidence do you have? But the archaeologist isn't looking at her. Instead, his eyes stare in horror at the elephant carcass suspended behind her. There was a huge, reptilian bite mark taken out of it. A testing bite, like the ones given by sharks. She turns to follow his gaze, and all of her rage is washed away in a sickening delight. It's here. A scream from the crane holding the elephant makes them both jump, but by the time they look up at the cabin, all they see is a hulking shadow leaping away into the darkness. The professor clicks on her walkie-talkie and starts issuing commands. No one responds, except the tank crews. She tries again. Radio silence. Now the gravity of the situation really starts to hit her. Eyes wide with panic, she runs off down the ramp, barking into her radio and leaving the archaeologist up here on his own. Suddenly, under all of these lights, he feels very exposed. It could be anywhere in the shadows. Footsteps, heavy, planted footsteps tremor through the ground, and out of the woods walks the creature. Several meters long, fat from all of its hunting, the beast that would soon be known as SCP-682 slinks into view. It looks up at him, standing there on the trap door over a metal box, and looks like it's almost ready to laugh at how easy this will be. Boom! The tank blast hits the creature square in the torso, knocking it sideways. Boom! 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 The 3 tanks open fire one after the other, laying round after round into the colossal reptile, kicking more and more dust into the air. Before long, there's a crater in the ground so large that it looks almost like an asteroid hit it. Smoke and dust fill the air. The archaeologist's eyes fill with tears. That majestic creature, roaming the earth long before mankind ever did, exterminated just like that. Cowards. That's what people really are. Cowards. But as the dust clears, a groaning sound echoes around the clearing. The archaeologist shields his eyes and peers into the crater as best he can, but there's nothing there. Boom! He wheels around and almost falls backwards in shock. The SCP has snuck through the haze and leapt onto one of the tanks. It bites and tears at the armored bodywork, doing all it can to destroy it. In a panic, 2 of the tanks point toward one another and fire, destroying themselves in the process. The creature rounds on the remaining tank and bites down hard on the barrel. The tank fires, the round going straight down the monster's throat and exploding inside its gut. The backdraft from the blast shoots back through the tank, and the puff of smoke trails out of the hatch at the top. And suddenly, once again, the clearing is quiet. Turning back to the archaeologist, SCP-682 slinks towards him, smoke still curling up out of his leering teeth. With heavy, thunking steps, it climbs the ramp towards him, stopping just short of the trap door. The 2 of them stare each other in the eye, predator and prey. Neither move for a moment. Then it opens its mouth. The archaeologist closes his eyes.
Do you know that you disgusting creatures deserve this?
He opens them. Did the monster just speak?
What do they hope to accomplish by attacking me?
He gulps hard. That whisper he heard in the woods, the rock he'd been standing on. They're scientists. Scientists always try to learn more things, understand the world better. We think you can't be killed, so they're testing their hypothesis. The creature growls. The stench of rotten flesh fills the archaeologist's nose. It takes a step towards him, then another. The archaeologist runs. He'll leap off the other end of the platform. It's a big jump, but he could make it. The predator's breath is on the back of his neck. He jumps, just as the trapdoor gives way. With an enormous thud, the SCP falls into the steel enclosure. Before it has a chance to move, the crane unhitches the steel lid, and it crashes down into place, sealing the monster inside. The archaeologist lands in the dirt and rolls onto his back to see the professor, wild-eyed and cheering, up in the crane's cabin. He lies there on his back, panting and staring up at the stars. A clunking sound echoes through the clearing, and the gurgle of a liquid flowing through pipes. He sits up, adrenaline still pumping through him. The professor has plugged a pipe into the metal enclosure and is running gallons and gallons of liquid into it. He follows the tube with his eyes, all the way to the enormous hazardous vats on the edge of the clearing. Hydrochloric acid. His eyes widen in horror. The professor laughs at him. Come on, cheer up. We're just scientists, that's what you said. Just testing a hypothesis. A young man is in the middle of one of his regular night jogs through the park. He loves running through this park at night. It's dark, the air is cool, and the sounds of the city that surround the park disappear, offering peace, quiet, and a small reprieve from the busy world. He jogs along a path that winds through the park and starts upon a section that is surrounded on both sides by tall trees. He follows the path around a sharp bend and is stopped in his tracks. Standing there, in the middle of the track, is a figure. It has its back to him and isn't moving. He's tall and so uniformly black that he almost disappears into the night. Whoever or whatever this is, he's scared of it. But the creature doesn't move, and neither does he. He's frozen, unsure of what to do, when the creature suddenly turns his head towards him, revealing a pair of bright, glowing eyes. The runner is so terrified he can't even scream. He falls and crawls backwards in the dirt, trying to get away from the creature. The creature turns its body towards him and begins stepping forward. The runner scrambles to his feet and runs. He's sprinting as hard and as fast as he can, adrenaline pumping, heart pounding, trying to put as much distance as he can between himself and that thing. His muscles burn, his lungs ache, but he can't stop. Finally, he's back at his house. He bursts through the door, locking and bolting it behind him. His girlfriend is reading on the couch and doesn't understand what's going on. After struggling to catch his breath, he tries to explain what he saw on the path, but his girlfriend just laughs. A giant man with glowing eyes? He was just seeing things in the dark. It was probably a dog, nothing that would justify the panic he was now in. The next day, he's left wondering if he really was mistaken. Those piercing, glowing eyes are burned into his mind, though. Maybe his girlfriend was right, and it really was just a dog. Yes, that must be it. His mind was just playing tricks on him in the dark. Even so, he's going to stick to running inside, at least for a little while. But he soon finds that he's having a hard time. He notices that he's running out of breath much quicker than normal. Is he coming down with something? He doesn't feel sick, but then why is he suddenly so weak? 2 weeks have passed since he saw something in the park. No one he brought it up to, not his friends, not his co-workers, have ever heard of such a thing, and no one seemed like they believed him either. At this point, he is feeling sure that he really did imagine it, but he can't get that image of whatever it was out of his head. He can't keep running on a treadmill forever, though. He misses his night runs. It's time to get over his fear. He's running through the park again, enjoying the silence and the light breeze on his skin. He continues down the path, acutely aware that he's getting closer and closer to the spot where he saw that thing before. He can't stop, though. He has to prove to everyone that he's not afraid. He has to prove it to himself. He reaches the part of the path that runs through the tall trees. Just like before, the sounds of the city melt away, the only sound coming from his steady, heavy breathing. He follows the winding path and feels his heart starting to race, but he has to keep going. He rounds the same corner, and nothing is there. He slows to a stop. Of course nothing is here. Nothing ever was. He really did imagine it. Or did he? Buongiorno. Today's file comes from the Italian branch of the SCP Foundation, SCP-015-IT, also known as The Boogeyman. SCP-015-IT is a humanoid entity that stands just under 2 meters tall. Its body is devoid of any hair, and its dark, black skin absorbs 98% of all light, making it virtually invisible in low light. Its head lacks a nose or ears, but these missing features are hardly noticed, because if you see 015-IT, its eyes are what demand all of your attention. While the Boogeyman's skin is completely black, its eyes contain light-producing organs on the irises, causing them to glow in the dark, like a deep-sea predator. Its mouth contains 8 pointed teeth on both the upper and lower jaws, and a long 28-centimeter forked tongue. The 2 tips of its tongue each have a hollow needle-like organ that leads straight into its esophagus. More on what it does with that specialized biological feature soon. Physically, SCP-015-IT is rather slight, but it is surprisingly strong and easily able to overpower an adult human. Its skinny arms are much longer than an average human's, and each of its 4 fingers ends in a razor-sharp claw. It has also been shown to be quite resistant to physical injuries and possesses the ability to heal wounds and damage to internal organs at a hyper-accelerated rate. SCP-015-IT is primarily active at night, which is unsurprising given its skin's natural camouflage in the dark. The Boogeyman hunts mammals, with humans being its preferred prey, but it does not feed on flesh. Instead, SCP-015-IT draws its sustenance from the adrenaline and noradrenaline produced by its quarry. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are chemicals the body produces to increase heart rate, blood flow, and provide more energy to the muscles in moments of stress, or in the case of SCP-015-IT, extreme fear. And it has developed a hunting method to cause this exact reaction in humans. 015-IT will usually hide in dark spots, trying to keep out of sight as much as possible as it stalks its next victim. If it has been able to remain unseen, it will wait for a moment when its prey has become distracted so it can silently approach them. Once close enough, it will leap towards its unaware victim, grab them, and quickly bite them on the side of the torso, near where the adrenal gland is located. It uses its large teeth to anchor its mouth in place, as it uses the needles on its forked tongue to probe into their body. With one needle, it pierces directly into the adrenal gland and begins draining the blood that is now rich with fear-induced adrenaline. At the exact same time, the other needle releases a mild sedative, allowing 015-IT to feed and then depart without risk as the victim remains immobile. Another anomalous effect occurs when someone is unlucky enough to actually see the boogeyman. Roughly 2 weeks after observing the creature, the person who saw it will begin experiencing various detrimental mental effects, including hallucinations and panic attacks. Some will also begin to experience physical issues, most often damage to the cardiovascular system. It is unknown why exactly these mental and physical effects occur, but it is theorized that SCP-015-IT may use it as a way to weaken certain prey that it considers too strong or potentially dangerous. In 2011, the boogeyman was actually contained, but not by the SCP Foundation. The Brotherhood of St. George's Knights is a secret order in the Catholic Church that was created by the Pope in the year 453 to either contain or eliminate all anomalies, and it was this group that first captured SCP-015-IT, which they designated as Dia 212, in line with their own classification system. While it was in their containment, they made a number of discoveries about the creature that they labeled as a shadow demon. First, they found that while it feeds on the fear of its victims by ingesting their blood, it doesn't actually require this to survive. Dia 212, as they call it, is an unstable entity, and feeding allows it to maintain its physical shape in our reality. In addition to its impressive physical strength, the boogeyman is also quite intelligent, as seen by its ability to successfully hunt, attack, and escape from humans. Strangely, it also appears to be resistant to weapons which have been blessed, causing only a fraction of the physical damage that they should when compared to a similar, non-holy version. During the course of research into the creature, Father Ilardi, a member of the Brotherhood of St. George's Knights, wrote that despite the creature being repugnant beyond every limit, he believed that it had a gentle soul, and that its screams are similar to a pained cry. He postulated that SCP-015-IT may have even once been a human before some dark force transformed it into the monster that it had become. He decided that it was his mission to find a way to communicate with the creature, and one day bring it back into the light and love of his god. Father Ilardi was making good progress with the creature, and it seemed like it was even growing fond of him and his disciples. But his advances were halted when they were attacked by a group of soldiers from the Fascist Council of the Occult, a terrorist group that seeks to use anomalies as weapons in their quest to disrupt the social order. In the attack, several of the Brotherhood were killed, and in the commotion, SCP-015-IT escaped. Following this, reports soon began to come from the province of Caserta that described what sounded like vampire attacks. A mobile task force was sent to the area, and while 015-IT was initially able to make use of its various physical abilities to evade and escape capture, it was eventually shot with a transmitter that allowed it to be tracked. The Italian mobile task force was able to surround the creature, but fearing being contained again, it responded with a level of violence that it had not been thought capable of. Several members of the task force were killed in the line of duty before the boogeyman could finally be subdued. Today, SCP-015-IT is contained at Site Vittoria in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. Since this anomaly is both sentient and highly unpredictable in its behavior, it has been classified as Euclid. It is kept in a standard humanoid entity containment cell and is monitored by video cameras and infrared sensors at all times. Due to the light-absorbing properties of its skin, its cell and the adjacent corridors are painted white and are to be kept well lit at all times. Twice a day, SCP-015-IT is given a normal domestic pig that it is allowed to feed on. Any personnel assigned to 015-IT duty must undergo a psychological assessment on a weekly basis, and, regardless of the results, must be cycled out after 3 months of exposure to the boogeyman. The man and his dog walked across the farmland, the early morning sun casting long shadows on the earth. Another day, another trip to the chicken coop to feed the birds. The dog trotted alongside him, content, while the man soaked in the silence, unaware of how quickly that was about to be shattered. But as they neared the coop, something felt wrong. The usual pecking and clucking was gone, replaced by eerie silence. Several chickens lay motionless, their bodies twisted unnaturally, feathers matted with dried blood. Their eyes were wide open, frozen mid-scream. The dog's tail shot straight, hackles bristling. A low growl rose in its throat. Then it erupted into a sharp, frantic bark, eyes locked upward. The man followed its gaze. At first, all he saw was sky. Then, a sound. A buzz like a mosquito, but deeper, meaner. He squinted, and there it was, a drone, hovering high above, sleek and metallic, its proboscis glinting in the sun.
Great,
the man muttered, the words low and dry, the anger bubbling under the surface.
Just great.
He grabbed several rocks from the ground and hurled them at the drone. The rocks missed by a good 5 feet. The drone buzzed off into the sky, seemingly in retreat. The man stood still. Even though the drone had disappeared, he knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By nightfall, the man still couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He stood at the stove, stirring a pot of stew, but his focus was slipping. His dog was pacing back and forth, barking at the windows and the darkness beyond.
Relax,
the man muttered, but it came out more like a reflex than anything that might calm the dog. He tried to ignore it, shoving the unease down as he flipped through the TV channels, letting the hum of the screen drown out the barking. But the dog wasn't having it. Its barks grew more frantic, like it could sense something the man couldn't. The man exhaled sharply, annoyed. He looked out the window. Nothing. Just the dark, empty yard. But then, there it was again. That low, buzzing hum. It hovered behind the tree line, waiting for the perfect moment, like a predator eyeing its prey. It could feel him, the man. He was its target. The drone wasn't done yet. It wasn't going anywhere until it had its revenge. Inside the house, the man could feel it. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, but he didn't look outside. Not yet. The dog's barking escalated, high-pitched, frantic. It was almost desperate now. The man ignored it. He locked all the windows, trying to push it out of his mind, but no matter how hard he tried, that buzzing sound stayed in his head. The drone was still out there, watching him, waiting. The next morning, the man went about his day. He peered outside, half expecting the drone to be hovering there like some eerie metallic sentinel. But the sky was clear, and for a brief moment, he felt something he hadn't in a while. Relief. He sighed, the weight on his shoulders easing just a bit. Maybe it was just a fluke. Maybe he could finally get some peace and clean the side of the house. He grabbed the industrial hose. No more procrastinating. The dirt had been building up for far too long. He started spraying down the side of the house, the water blasting against the grime. His dog, ever the watchful companion, was barking again, though. He ignored it, focused on the job. He didn't even glance back. Behind him, though, something was happening. The drone reappeared, ominously hovering just above him. It came in slowly at first, like a shadow, its presence growing heavier with each beat of its rotors. The dog saw it, of course. The dog always saw it coming, but the man was too busy to notice. In a flash, the dog ran. Without thinking, it jumped onto the man, knocking him to the ground just as the drone swooped down, its metallic proboscis just inches away from the man's face, a heartbeat away from disaster. The man's eyes widened as he hit the dirt, his breath catching. What the? He turned his head and saw the drone, quickly realizing just how close he had come to being skewered. The dog was already backing away, standing guard, like it knew it had just saved the man's life. The man scrambled to his feet. He grabbed the industrial hose and turned it on full blast. He aimed at the drone. The water shot forward with such force it could have knocked a brick wall down. The drone easily outmaneuvered the stream of water. It quickly retreated, buzzing angrily as it fled back into the sky. The man stood there, panting, watching the drone go. He gave the hose one last shake, muttering to himself,
Well, that's one way to spend my morning.
That night, while the man and his dog ate dinner, the atmosphere in the house felt a little off. The dog, who had been calm moments ago, suddenly tensed up. His ears pricked and his eyes locked on the window. The man paused mid-bite. His dog's sudden shift wasn't just paranoia. The animal was sharp, and the man knew enough now to listen. He set his fork down and cautiously walked toward the window, the dog's low growl growing louder with each step. He peeked outside, eyes scanning the darkness. Nothing. Just the moonlit yard and a few stray shadows. But of course, the drone had no intention of being seen. From its hiding spot behind a thick tree, it observed them. Its sensors focused on the man and his dog, monitoring every slight movement. It didn't need to get any closer. Not yet. It had all the time in the world. Back inside, the man turned away from the window, sighing.
Nothing.
he muttered to himself. The dog's growling hadn't subsided. It was just too quiet. The man grabbed the phone and dialed the police. This had to be dealt with. When the officer picked up, the man wasted no time.
Listen, I've got a drone on my property. It's been stalking me, and it's acting like it's ready to attack.
The officer interrupted, voice flat.
Sounds like a prank, sir. Maybe some kids messing around.
The man's grip tightened on the phone.
I'm telling you, it's been circling my house all day.
There was a pause, followed by a slow sigh from the officer.
Sure, okay. Just stay inside and keep your doors locked, all right?
The man didn't even bother to respond. He hung up, muttering curses under his breath. The man closed the curtains, then turned off the lights throughout his house, one by one. It was time for bed. From its position outside, the drone's sensors flickered, adjusting as it tracked the man's movements through the windows. It watched as the man moved through the house, one last trace of light left as he shut off the final switch. The drone's systems blinked with irritation. The dark was its enemy. Without the glowing outline of the man's figure behind the curtains, it had no clear way of knowing where he was. It had lost sight of its prey. The man stood in the silence of the dark. He couldn't help but feel that it wasn't over. The drone, wherever it was still out there, lurking. The next morning, the man had to venture outside the safety of his home again. This time, it was to till the fields. He took a long look around before stepping out of the house. No sign of the drone. He walked to the barn where his tractor was stored, trying to shake off the unease crawling up his spine. He glanced at his dog, who had gone completely still, ears pricked and eyes fixed on the horizon. But the dog didn't need to bark this time. The man knew better. His dog was growling a warning, and his dog was never wrong. Without a second thought, the man broke into a run toward the barn. His boots hit the dirt hard, each step more frantic than the last. His dog followed just behind him. They reached the tractor and jumped in. The man breathed a sigh of relief as the tractor door slammed shut. His heart was pounding, but then it hit him. He didn't have anything to defend himself with if that drone came at him again. His shotgun, his hunting gear, everything was a few feet away in the shed. The same shed he'd have to sprint to from the field he'd be tilling if things went south. He gritted his teeth and braced himself. The drone hovered just out of view, watching from behind the barn door. Its sensors tracked every movement, every shift in the man's stance. It was patient. It knew the man would slip up sooner or later. And then the tractor door creaked open. The man stepped out of the tractor and made a dash for his hunting gear. Before he could blink, the drone dove at him like a bullet. But just in the nick of time, the man turned around, shotgun in hand, and fired. The blast rang out, and the drone jerked back, clipped in the underbelly. It didn't drop, but it did pull away, buzzing furiously as it went. The man exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding, watching the drone fly off into the distance. He'd done it. He'd scared it off. For now, at least. He grinned to himself, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. He'd protected himself, protected his property. The drone wasn't going to ruin his day. He hopped back into his tractor, his loyal four-legged friend beside him. The engine roared to life, and together they drove off to the field surrounding his house. The tilling went by uneventfully at first. The tractor hummed steadily, cutting through the soil as the man focused on the task. But then he noticed his dog, his loyal four-legged friend, acting a little off. The dog, used to having the windows down to sniff the air, now just stared out the window, looking miserable. His wet nose pressed against the glass, the longing in his eyes obvious as he tried to get a whiff of the breeze that always made him happy. A small knot of guilt formed in the man's gut. He knew what the dog wanted. The dog looked back at him, eyes wide, ears perked. But the man hesitated. What if the drone was still lurking? What if it came back the second he let his guard down? He scanned the skies. Nothing. No sign of the drone. He sighed, giving in to the dog's pleading gaze. The last thing he wanted was to deal with a sad, sulking dog for the rest of the afternoon. He reached over and carefully began to turn the window handle. The dog's tail started wagging immediately, and it licked the man's face. The joy was contagious, and for a moment, the man actually smiled. The drone hovered directly above the tractor, a silent predator waiting for its moment. The moment any crevice creaked open, it would be ready. No more games. The drone's systems buzzed quietly, as the man was just about to give it what it wanted. The tractor's passenger window slid open. The dog immediately threw his head out, ears flopping in the wind, breathing in the fresh air like it was the best thing he'd ever smelled. And then, it happened. Seemingly out of nowhere, the drone descended from above, its proboscis shooting down with terrifying precision. It struck the dog's skull, sinking in with a sickening thud. The dog yelped once, sharp and desperate, and then went completely limp before the man even had time to react. His heart froze. The world seemed to stop. He slammed his foot on the brake, the tractor skidding to a halt. He didn't even register the sound of the engine grinding to a stop. His hands shook as he reached for the dog, but there was nothing to do. His loyal companion was not moving. The drone, like some twisted creature of the night, hovered beside the open window, its proboscis still glistening with the remnants of its strike. The man's chest tightened with rage. He grabbed his shotgun, his fingers trembling as he aimed at the drone. Several blasts rang out, but they all missed. The drone darted away with a mocking buzz, faster than the man could fire. Grief, fury, and helplessness churned inside him, but he was too late. The drone was already gone. And his dog? His dog was gone too. Beside himself with grief, the man carried his beloved four-legged friend back to the house. His shotgun hung from his shoulder, but it might as well have been made of paper. Tears streamed down his face as he trudged across the dirt, his chest tight with sorrow. Beside the front porch, he dug a grave for his dog, every shovelful of dirt feeling like it was digging into his heart, too. When the hole was deep enough, he gently placed his friend inside, the weight of his grief crushing him as he stood over the fresh grave. With a shaky breath, he whispered,
I'll kill that thing, if it's the last thing I do.
That night, the man ate dinner alone. His dog's empty bowl sat beside him like a cruel reminder. He couldn't look at it without feeling the sharp sting of loss in his chest. The food, the silence, everything felt wrong. Emotion bubbled up in his eyes again, and just as he wiped the tears away, a faint buzzing filled the air. From just outside, the drone hovered, its sensors locking onto the man in the kitchen. It wouldn't leave him alone, not until it had finished what he started. The man's head snapped up, and he saw the drone hovering outside his kitchen window. The thing was trying to break in. It bumped into the glass, a soft thud, then another, each bump more aggravated than the last. The man stood up, shaking. Without a second thought, he closed the shutters. Then he closed the shutters on every other window in the house, locking them tight. But as he stood there, breathing heavily, he knew it wouldn't stop there. He waited, listening, trying to understand what its next move would be. The buzzing faded, but just as the man began to sigh with relief, the buzzing grew louder as the drone came closer to the house. This time, it went for the front door. It slammed its proboscis against the knob, pushing, testing, looking for a way inside. The man bolted to the door, throwing a chair in front of it to block the drone's relentless assault. His hands shook, but he did it anyway. He backed away, trying to catch his breath. He flopped onto the couch, exhausted. He thought he was safe now, inside his home, behind locked doors. He wasn't. The drone circled the house, its frustration growing with each failed attempt to break through. Its proboscis thrusted uselessly against the door, but it couldn't get in that way. It knew that, but it wasn't done. The man had attacked it. He'd hurt it, and it would make him pay. The drone flew around the house, searching for a weak spot. The windows locked. The door barricaded. It scanned the perimeter of the house. There had to be an entry point. Its internal systems started chiming with glee. It found a weak spot. The chimney. The one place the man hadn't thought to protect. The drone hovered toward it, its systems calculating, planning. Grief-stricken and defeated, the man sat aimlessly on the couch, staring into space. The drone's buzzing was the last thing on his mind, until he heard something else, a soft rattle. The rattle grew louder, turning into a steady, unyielding hum. His heart dropped into his stomach as he realized where it was coming from. The drone emerged from the fireplace. The man jumped up in terror, his heart hammering in his chest. He turned and ran through the house, the drone hot on his heels. He grabbed anything he could, a book, a chair, a vase, and hurled it at the drone. The drone dodged each item effortlessly, buzzing toward him relentlessly, never slowing. Desperation clawed at the man, He dashed through the house, trying to lose it, trying to escape, but there was no escaping. In a panic, he threw open the refrigerator door, and by some miracle, with sheer blunt force, he knocked the drone to the kitchen floor. The man stood there, gasping for air, heart racing. His mind was a blur of confusion, half expecting the thing to jump back up and finish what it started. But the drone lay there, still. It was almost too quiet. He exhaled, a shaky breath of relief. He was done with this. He had won. Hadn't he? He took a cautious step forward, eyes narrowed, ready for whatever move it might pull next. And then, just like that, the drone sprang to life. Its proboscis shot out like a snake striking in the dark. Before he could react, it hit him. The man gasped, his world starting to fade to black. The last thing he heard was the whirl of the drone's blades. Then nothing. SCP-160, an anomaly classified by the Foundation as Euclid. Let's talk about this little flying nightmare, shall we? What we have here is a quadriflyer unmanned aerial vehicle, the UAV, measuring about 1.1 meters across at its widest point. It looks like something you'd expect from the next-gen tech catalog, but of course, the fine details have been conveniently wiped clean. No manufacturer logos, no identifying marks, just a sleek, untraceable machine, because clearly the world needed something like this. Now, SCP-160 operates autonomously with no apparent external control. It's essentially a flying predator. Its behavior is reminiscent of birds of prey, except this one's made of metal and hell-bent on finding its next meal. This drone actively hunts small animals, rodents, rabbits, miniature dogs, you name it. Once it locks onto its prey, it dives down at insane speeds, impaling the unfortunate animal with a metallic proboscis. That's when the fun begins. It injects a highly caustic substance, liquefying the internal organs of its victim and draining the resulting slurry. Bon appetit. It doesn't have much interest in humans or larger animals, usually. That said, if you happen to annoy it, this drone has no problem defending itself. And we're talking brutal self-defense. One jab from its proboscis, and you're in for excruciating pain, possibly death, as your organs liquefy from the inside out. And don't even think about tranquilizing it. Attempts to use tranquilizer darts? Useless. SCP-160 is made from entirely non-biological components, rendering such methods ineffective. There was even talk about using an electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, to disable it, but higher-ups vetoed that idea. Why? Because it might cause unforeseen collateral damage, which sounds like a fun day at work. SCP-160 was discovered following a series of missing pets in a town, suspiciously vanishing, only to be found later in various less than pleasant states. After several pets had gone missing and reappeared lifeless, the Foundation was alerted. Upon investigation, SCP-160 was quickly identified and captured. Further searches in the area turned up many small animals, including cats, rabbits, and miniature dogs. SCP-160 was transported to a secure site, where it's been kept under tight control ever since. SCP-160 is stored in a secure biocontainment chamber, where it is to be fed live prey, usually rabbits or similarly sized animals, once per week, all via an automated system, because letting anyone get too close is a bad idea. Experiments require approval from at least 2 Level 3 personnel, and any personnel entering the chamber must wear an armored suit at all times. So the next time you cross paths with a drone like SCP-160, maybe try talking it out. I'm kidding, it won't listen. Do yourself a favor, run. Don't throw rocks, don't try to fight it, just run. Because if you don't, you'll end up regretting it when your organs turn into a puddle. It's really not the kind of life lesson you want to learn. The town sat in the shadow of a dense forest. The roads were narrow and twisted, surrounded by trees that blocked most of the sunlight. Even during the day, the town felt dark. The power grid was unreliable, so people relied on lanterns and generators. Life here was quiet, but there was always a feeling of unease that lingered in the air. It began with a farmer. He stumbled into the diner one evening. His boots were caked with mud, and his face was drained of color. The bell above the door jingled, but no one paid any notice at first. The farmer didn't say anything, just dropped a photograph on the counter. The picture showed a pile of bones. They were clean, almost shining, and arranged in a strange way. Around them, the ground looked wet with something dark and oily. "Found it behind my barn," he said, his voice low, almost trembling. Coyotes? Someone offered, though their tone was uncertain. The farmer shook his head. He explained that coyotes don't leave bones like this. And then the farmer shared a chilling detail. There was not a single trace of fur or tracks left behind. The room fell quiet as the photograph was passed from hand to hand. People exchanged nervous glances. Some muttered about predators, but others spoke in whispers about the old stories, the ones about the forest and the things that lived deep inside it. Behind the counter, the teenager on shift listened closely. He'd heard the stories before, but the picture made his skin crawl. When his shift ended, he stepped out into the cool night air, unable to shift the image of bones from his mind. His friends were already hanging out at the bowling alley. Greasy trays of nachos and fries were piled on the table. The rhythmic crashing of pins and the thud of classic rock music filled the air. He slid into the booth, grabbing a fry from one of the plates. He told them about the picture the farmer brought into the diner. His friends exchanged glances. "We should check it out," one of them said, grinning nervously. The teenager hesitated. "It's probably nothing." But the group had already decided. They reached the barn under a full moon. The air was cold, and the building loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against the night sky. Its wooden frame creaked faintly in the breeze, the old boards warped and sagging. It looked like the structure could collapse at any moment. They climbed over the fence, the flashlight cutting through the dark. The pile of bones was there, just like the farmer had said. The flashlight beam caught the oily residue glinting on the ground around it. The smell hit them next, sharp and metallic, like rusted metal mixed with something sour. They stood there for a moment, taking in the strange sight. Then the flashlight flickered. "Don't do that," someone whispered at the boy holding the flashlight. But the teen didn't do anything. This wasn't the time or place for pranks. He looked down at the flashlight flickering in his hand. "I think it's running out of..." Before he could finish the sentence, the beam sputtered once, twice, and then went out, plunging them into pitch black. "Who's got another light?" someone else whispered, their voice shaky. No one did. The group huddled together, the silence pressing down on them. Then they heard it, a faint, wet sound, like something sliding across wood. It came from inside the barn. "Did you hear that?" someone whispered, their voice barely audible. One of the teens tried to feel their way towards the barn door, but it was too late. Something cold brushed against their ankle, and they yelped. The sound triggered movement, fast and chaotic. The wet sliding grew louder, and a dark shape spilled out from the corner of the barn, moving in unnatural liquid motions. A scream tore through the night as one of the teenagers was pulled away. The others fumbled blindly, their hands finding nothing but air as the shadow consumed their friend. The sound of bones cracking filled the air, followed by wet, gurgling cries that cut off suddenly. Another teenager was yanked backward, their feet scraping against the dirt as they screamed for help. The group scattered in panic, but the shadow moved faster. It wrapped around another, pulling them to the ground. The last thing the others heard was the sound of something tearing, followed by silence. The teenager who had suggested the trip stumbled and fell, his palms scraping against the dirt. He looked up just in time to see a tendril of shadow lunge toward him. It caught his leg. He let out a blood-curdling scream as it began to pull him back. In the chaos, a boy who had stayed near the back managed to wrench open the barn door. Moonlight spilled into the space, and for a moment, the shadow recoiled, hissing like steam hitting cold water. The boy's eyes widened. He took a step backward and then ran. The boy didn't stop. His feet pounded against the dirt path, and his breath tore from his lungs in ragged gasps. The forest blurred around him, but he didn't dare look back. He didn't want to see if the shadow was following. All he knew was that he had to get to town. He had to tell someone. When he burst into the main square, disheveled and wide-eyed, his screams drew a small crowd. He tried to explain, his words tumbling over each other. "It got him! In the barn! The shadow! It wasn't..." His hands trembled, and his face was pale with terror. The people listened, skeptical at first, but the boy's panic was infectious. Someone ran to fetch the sheriff, while others murmured among themselves, their unease growing. By the time the boy finished his frantic story, the once quiet town had erupted in a mix of fear and confusion. It didn't take long for the rumors to spread. Some dismissed the boy's tale as hysteria. Others whispered that it sounded too much like the old stories their grandparents used to tell, stories of things that moved in the dark. Either way, a creeping tension enveloped the town. Night fell, and the power grid failed with clockwork precision. Darkness swallowed the town whole, plunging every home into silence and shadow. Families huddled together around flickering candles, their whispers barely audible over the crackle of flames. Fear soaked into every corner, every conversation. No one wanted to admit it, but they knew something was wrong. Then, the disappearances began. It started small, a neighbor missing from their usual spot at the diner, a dog leash lying limp on an empty street. But soon, entire homes were found deserted. No signs of struggle, no broken doors or windows, just faint, chalky stains on furniture, bed sheets, and even clothing. Calcium deposits that made no sense. The sheriff's office had no answers. The unease turned to dread. The town's sheriff wasn't one for superstition. He dealt in facts, in evidence, but the stories piling up were testing even his pragmatism. What gnawed at him most was the thought of his mother, living alone at the edge of the forest. She insisted she was fine, brushing off his concerns with a wave of her hand. Still, he couldn't shake the image of her in the dark, defenseless against whatever was out there. One evening, he arrived at her house with a small camera tucked under his arm. She fussed at him, but he waved her off.
It's just in case,
he said, his voice steady but strained. He positioned the camera on her dresser, angling it to cover the bed and most of the room.
See?
He said, gesturing to the blinking red light.
Nothing to worry about.
She gave him a skeptical look, but nodded. As he left, she stood in the doorway, watching him with a mix of amusement and something deeper, concern maybe, or understanding. The blackout came as expected. The chief sat at his desk in the station, the camera feed pulled up on his laptop. The dim glow of the screen was the only light in the room. His mother lay in bed, the soft rise and fall of her chest reassuring him. He let out a breath, tension easing slightly. But then, the room on the screen shifted. It was subtle at first, the shadows near the dresser deepening, pooling like spilled ink. The chief leaned closer to the screen, his pulse quickening. The shadows moved. They crept along the floor, climbing the walls in slow, deliberate waves. The camera's night vision flickered, distorting the image. When it stabilized, something new had appeared. A dark, amorphous mass, barely discernible against the backdrop of the room. It shifted, flowing silently, almost like liquid smoke. It slid toward the bed. The chief's stomach turned to ice. "Mom," he whispered to the screen, as if she could hear him. She stirred slightly, her face peaceful. The shadow stretched, tendrils reaching out like fingers. One brushed the edge of the bed, then another. The camera's feed glitched again, and when it returned, the shadow was gone. And so was his mother. He bolted from the station, his mind racing. When he burst into her house, the bed was empty. Her favorite quilt lay folded neatly at the foot, her glasses on the nightstand. The room smelled faintly, and on the pillow, a fine white dust caught the moonlight. "Mom!" he shouted, his voice echoing through the empty house. The silence that followed was deafening. The sheriff stood alone in his mother's room. His eyes darted from the empty bed to the faint dust coating the pillow. He reached out, running his fingers through the powder. It felt brittle, like crushed chalk, and crumbled away at his touch. "Where are you?" he whispered, his voice breaking. The silence answered with its cold indifference. He forced himself to move, stepping out into the hallway. Each creak of the floorboards echoed, amplifying the hollow feeling in his chest. He checked every room, every closet, calling her name. Nothing, not a trace of her. Outside, the blackout draped the neighborhood in darkness. Only the faint glow of the moon filtered through the thick canopy of trees, casting long, skeletal shadows across the lawn. His breath misted in the cold night air as he scanned the property, hoping for some sign, any clue. That's when he saw it. A trail. Barely visible, a faint scattering of the same white dust shimmered under the moonlight, leading away from the house. It twisted through the yard, past the fence, and into the forest beyond. The sheriff hesitated, his grip tightening on the flashlight clipped to his belt. Every instinct screamed to wait until morning, to gather help, to think. But there wasn't time. His mother was out there. He unholstered his sidearm, checked the chamber, and stepped into the woods. The forest swallowed him whole. The air grew colder, the silence heavier with every step. The trail snaked between the trees, almost glowing in the unnatural dark. His flashlight beam bobbed with his movement, illuminating the gnarled roots and dense undergrowth that threatened to trip him. "Mom!" he called again. Ahead, something shifted. The sheriff stopped, holding his breath. The beam of his flashlight swept through the trees, catching fleeting movements at the edges of his vision. He turned sharply, the beam bouncing. Shadows flitted just out of reach, slipping between the trees like liquid. "Who's there?" he demanded, raising his weapon. His voice trembled despite his best efforts to keep it steady. The shadows didn't answer. Instead, the air changed. It thickened, heavy with a metallic tang that clung to his tongue and throat. The flashlight flickered, the beam sputtering, before plunging him into near-total darkness. He smacked the side of it, his pulse hammering, and the light returned, just in time to catch something move. It wasn't human. A mass of darkness slithered across the forest floor, pooling and stretching like oil on water. Tendrils unfurled, reaching out to the trees, the ground, and the air itself. The shadows seemed to feed on the light, pulling it in and leaving only emptiness behind. The sheriff stumbled back, his boots catching on roots. He raised his gun, firing into the mass. The shots echoed, but the shadow didn't slow. It surged forward, the tendrils growing faster, more frantic. He turned and ran. Branches clawed at his face and arms as he sprinted through the trees. The path was uneven, but he didn't stop. He could feel the darkness behind him closing in. Its movements were almost silent, punctuated only by a faint, wet sound. The house came into view. He burst through the back door, slamming it shut and locking it. His chest heaved as he backed into the kitchen, his eyes fixed on the door. For a moment, the world narrowed to the ragged rhythm of his breath. Then, the lights flickered. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the walls and floor. The shadows under the door thickened, dark tendrils seeping through the cracks like smoke. The sheriff backed away, his grip tightening on his weapon. His mother's face flashed in his mind, her soft smile, her reassuring laugh. He swallowed hard, raising the gun. The shadow surged. The sheriff braced himself, his gun aimed at the door, as the tendrils of darkness crept further into the room. The hum grew louder, a low, throbbing vibration that rattled the dishes on the counter and sent a shiver deep into his bones. He took a step back, his heart hammering in his chest. The kitchen lights flickered. The shadows pooled and swirled, stretching and retracting like something alive. It wasn't just darkness. It was hunger, sentient and deliberate. Then, as quickly as it had begun, it stopped. The shadows receded, slipping under the door and retreating into the night. The hum faded, leaving only the sheriff's panicked breathing and the faint buzz of the overhead light. He didn't lower his gun. He couldn't. When dawn finally broke, the town was a different place. The fear that had simmered beneath the surface had boiled over. Whispers spread like wildfire, stories of vanished loved ones, strange shadows, and white dust left behind. The sheriff shared what he'd seen, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying the weight of the encounter. His mother was gone, and no one doubted him anymore. By the following night, the town was in full survival mode. Every home was fortified. Lanterns were hung in windows, candles burned on mantels, and floodlights powered by generators illuminated yards and alleys. People carried flashlights and torches wherever they went. The streets, once quiet and dark, now glowed faintly with a patchwork of light. The townspeople organized patrols, teams of neighbors armed with whatever they could find to fight the darkness. They moved in groups, their flashlights sweeping through the shadows as they walked the streets. For a time, the efforts seemed to work. The disappearances slowed, and the oppressive hum in the air lessened, but the relief was short-lived. The blackouts continued. The darkness adapted. It moved differently now, slipping through cracks in doors and exploiting the shadows cast by the very lights meant to repel it. A family barricaded themselves in their living room, the glow of a dozen candles casting long shadows on the walls. When the candles burned out, they saw it, a mass of black seeping out from the corner, tendrils snaking toward them. By the time neighbors arrived, All that was left was a faint calcium residue on the furniture. The patrols grew more desperate. The sheriff joined every night, his flashlight never leaving his hand. People shared sightings of the shadow, recounting how it moved with terrifying precision. No one was safe, not even the animals. The town's only dog kennel was found empty one morning, every cage open, and a fine white powder dusting the floors. The escalating reports of disappearances and skeletal remains caught the attention of the SCP Foundation. Emergency broadcasts, local news segments, and frantic calls for help painted a picture that could no longer be ignored. A mobile task force, posing as government safety inspectors, arrived in the town. Their vehicles were unmarked, their presence quiet but purposeful. The residents, too desperate to question, welcomed the strangers. Portable floodlight arrays were set up around the town, replacing the unreliable local power grid. As they worked, the Foundation assigned the anomaly its official designation, SCP-575.
Hold the grid steady, the team leader ordered, his voice sharp through the comms. We can't afford a gap.
The floodlights roared to life, their intense beams creating a stark boundary. The darkness recoiled, pooling at the edges like ink spreading in water. For a moment, it seemed to work. The team watched as SCP-575 stilled, its tendrils retreating from the searing light.
We've got it,
one of the agents muttered, their voice tinged with cautious hope. But the victory was short-lived. The darkness began to ripple, shuddering like a living thing under the pressure of the light. Then, it fractured. The entity splintered into smaller, independent forms, each one slipping through cracks in walls and beneath door frames. The fragments regrouped in other parts of the town, spreading faster than the team could react.
Fall back, the lead shouted. We're losing containment.
The agents scrambled, repositioning the floodlights in a desperate attempt to cut off the shadows. But SCP-575 moved with unnerving precision, its fragments darting into places the light couldn't reach. One by one, the zones they had fortified all fell into darkness. The team convened in the mobile command center, their faces drawn with exhaustion. Maps of the town were spread across the table, marked with red circles showing the areas SCP-575 had overtaken. It was adapting. They needed a new approach. The lead agent leaned forward, their fingers tracing the pattern of red marks on the map.
This isn't random,
they said, their voice low.
It's moving with purpose, circling back to certain areas. It's almost like it's protecting something.
A researcher flipped through the dossier of a local folklore, his brow furrowed.
There's a lot of talk about a heart of darkness in the old stories here,
he said. He went on to explain that some stories described a shadow that lived in the forest that preyed on anything foolish enough to enter after sundown. It sounded like superstition, but the descriptions were eerily close to what they had seen. The other agents scoffed.
Do any of you have a better idea?
The lead agent snapped.
We've tried everything else.
The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. The researcher continued hesitantly.
If the folklore holds any truth, this thing might have a central point, a place it originates from, a home base, if you will. If we can find it, we might stand a chance of containing it.
The team exchanged glances, the weight of the decision hanging heavily. Finally, the lead agent nodded.
Fine. We follow the pattern. Cross-reference every blackout, every disappearance, and pinpoint where this thing might be hiding. If it has a lair, we'll find it.
One of the agents tapped a pencil against the map. It was the forest. Most of the blackout zones converged near the old logging trail. It was the most isolated point on the map.
Perfect for us to walk into a trap,
an agent muttered under their breath. The lead agent's gaze hardened.
It'll keep picking us off. We need to take the fight to it.
Preparations began immediately. The team equipped themselves with portable floodlights, thermal imaging cameras, and motion sensors. Generators hummed to life, powering lights that would push back even the deepest shadows. Their movements were sharp and deliberate, but beneath the surface, a current of unease followed. Before they left, the lead agent addressed the group.
Stick together. No heroics. If we find its base, we don't engage unless we're sure we can contain it. Clear?
A chorus of affirmations followed, but their faces betrayed their doubt. As they stepped out into the night, the forest loomed ahead, its towering trees casting long, jagged shadows. The hunt was on. The forest swallowed them whole. The agents moved in tight formation, their floodlights slicing through the darkness. Every step was deliberate,
every rustle of leaves underfoot sending ripples of tension through the group. The air grew colder the deeper they went, the sharp tang of pine mingling with something heavier, an acrid, metallic scent that stuck to their throats. "Eyes sharp," the lead agent said, their voice barely audible over the hum of the portable generator strapped to their back. The forest was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even the distant hum of insects. It was as if the woods themselves were holding their breath. The first sign appeared just beyond an old clearing. One agent paused, shining their light over a tree trunk. Deep gouges scored the bark, long and jagged, as if something massive had raked its claws through the wood. "Fresh," the agent whispered, their breath fogging in the cold air. "It's close." The team pressed on, the trail narrowing as the trees closed in. Their floodlights began to sputter, the beams dimming for fractions of a second before stabilizing. The air thickened, each breath a struggle as the metallic tang grew stronger. "There!" someone hissed, pointing ahead. At the heart of the forest, they found it. A massive sinkhole gaped in the earth, jagged rocks framing its edges like teeth. The darkness within was absolute, swallowing the beams of their lights as though the void itself were alive. Tendrils of shadow writhed at the edge of the pit, pulling at the light, testing its boundaries. One agent raised a thermal scanner, their hands trembling. "No heat signatures," they muttered. "It's nothing. Just a void." The lead agent wasn't buying it. "Get the floodlights into position," he commanded. The team moved quickly, setting up the portable lights around the perimeter of the sinkhole. Each floodlight roared to life, piercing the gloom with searing white beams. The shadows recoiled, hissing as they withdrew deeper into the pit. "Keep them steady," the lead agent barked. "Don't let the beams break." The tendrils lashed out, faster than the eye could follow. One struck a light, knocking it off balance. An agent dove forward, catching the unit before it hit the ground. The shadow hissed again, retreating as the light's beam steadied. "It's fighting back," someone muttered, their voice tight with fear. The lead agent pulled out a device, a prototype containment unit designed for anomalies like this. It hummed to life, emitting a low-frequency pulse that vibrated through the ground. "Deploy the array," they ordered. The device unleashed a web of light, a lattice of beams that expanded over the sinkhole like a net. The shadows writhed violently, their tendrils snapping at the edges of the light. The hum grew louder, the air vibrating with energy. "It's working!" an agent shouted, their voice filled with hope. The shadows began to contract, pulling inward as the light closed around them. The pit seemed to shudder, the tendrils thrashing wildly in a final, desperate attempt to escape. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, the shadows were gone. The sinkhole went still, the light holding steady over its surface. "Status?" the lead agent asked, their voice calm but edged with tension. One agent scanned the area with a handheld device. "No movement, no anomalies detected. It's contained." The team exhaled as one, relief washing over them like a wave. The lead agent didn't relax. He stared at the sinkhole, his jaw tight. "Pack it up," he said finally, but he knew it wasn't over. As the team dismantled the containment array, the forest seemed to exhale, the silence breaking with the faint rustle of leaves. But even as they prepared to leave, a single thought hung heavy in the air. They had contained it. For now. But SCP-575 wasn't gone. Parts of it were waiting, biding their time, and everyone knew it. SCP-575 has proven itself to be both cunning and annoyingly persistent. SCP-575 is highly vulnerable to intense illumination. Containment focuses on maintaining constant lighting within its designated containment area. High-intensity floodlights and backup power generators are used to ensure no dark spaces remain. Its containment chamber is equipped with overlapping floodlight arrays, minimizing the potential for shadows. Automated systems activate auxiliary lighting in the event of a power failure. The entity's behavior is constantly observed via cameras and sensors, ensuring that any breaches are detected immediately. SCP-575 can split into smaller autonomous forms that regroup in complete darkness. While light disrupts and immobilizes it, the entity has proven capable of targeting generators and light sources to regain strength. SCP-575 has also been observed to mimic sounds and human voices to lure victims into its reach, demonstrating its strategic nature. SCP-575 has been classified as Keter due to its predatory behavior, adaptability, and the significant threat it poses in the absence of light. Containment remains a priority, with research ongoing to better understand its origins and capabilities.
Your phone suddenly vibrates. A text alert. Nothing too surprising about that, but you don't recognize the number. You open the message, and there's no text, just a picture. A strange figure dressed all in black, with a face that looks like the skull of a dog. Who sent this, you think to yourself? Is this a prank? You try to put it out of your mind and go about your day. The next day, there's another message from the same number. You open this one to find the same dog skull-faced creature staring back at you. But this time, you recognize the background. Is that your house he's standing in front of? Now you're getting a little freaked out. Someone is trying to mess with you, you're sure of it. But what can you do? Another couple days pass, and you get another message. You don't need to look to know it's that same number again. You've been getting plenty of these over the last few days. You're really scared now, and you run out of the house to your car. You've got to get out of here. You drive, and while stopped at a light, you decide to finally check this latest message and see what it is. It's the creature again, but this time, it's a picture of him sitting in the back seat of your car. You put your phone down and slowly turn your head. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-1471, also known as MalO version 1.0.0. SCP-1471 is a very interesting anomaly that's not really a creature or a monster or even an object. It's a mobile app. It's 9.8 megabytes in size and is freely available in online application stores where it's listed under the name MalO version 1.0.0. There's no developer listed on any of the stores, and it seems as though the app is somehow able to bypass the normal application approval process and appear directly on the stores for wide distribution. Once SCP-1471 is downloaded and installed on a device, there are no icons, shortcuts, or widgets like you'd expect when installing software. It also does not appear on program managers, and once installed, it seems there's no way to remove it. Within 3 to 6 hours of installing the app, the individual whose device it is will begin receiving mysterious picture messages. All of these images will have one thing in common. Somewhere in the foreground or background is a large humanoid figure with a canine-like skull for a head and long black hair. This creature has been designated SCP-1471 Sometime during the first 24 hours following the installation of SCP-1471, the individual's device will start to receive slightly different images from before. These images still always contain instances of 1471 but now the locations will be recognizable to the individual. These pictures will be of places that the individual regularly frequents, like their local grocery store, their school, or their work. These sorts of images will continue to be received until 48 hours since the initial installation has passed. At that point, the device will start to receive images of places that the individual recently visited, like an image of the restaurant where they picked up their lunch an hour ago. Just as before, all of these images have SCP-1471 somewhere in them, as if it's been following them and wants them to know it. After 72 hours, things get even stranger. Now the pictures received by the individual will be of them in real time. They might receive a picture of themselves sitting on the couch, taking in that exact moment, except SCP-1471 is standing right behind them. But when they look, there's nothing there. It's as if someone is photoshopping in this bizarre canid creature, but doing so impossibly fast. Finally, after over 90 hours have passed since the app was installed, the weirdness reaches its peak. The individual no longer receives photo messages, but instead will start to catch glimpses of SCP-1471 in real life, either in their peripheral vision, in reflective surfaces, or in both. At this point, the individual afflicted will continue having visualizations of SCP-1471 in the real world, a result that so far has been irreversible. Individuals who have reached this extreme stage of exposure have reported that the entity appears to be trying to visually communicate with them, but none of them have been able to understand or comprehend whatever message it's trying to relay. Such was the case with a subject named William. William had first been exposed to SCP-1471 at 15 years old when his sister, Sarah, showed him an app she had downloaded earlier in the day. The app's description states that you will never have to settle for awkward feelings of being alone ever again. That MalO is an exciting and interactive experience that will keep you engaged and intrigued, and that after just a few hours of MalO, you will soon forget all about those painful emotions of disappointment. Neither William nor his sister knew how the app worked, but they assumed it was tracking them using some kind of GPS, and soon, William was receiving images from SCP-1471. The first one he received was of his school's courtyard, with SCP-1471 barely noticeable, sitting on a bench. He had black, matted fur, knife-like claws, a set of blank, pure white eyes, and a face that looked like the skull of a beast with a large, wolfish grin. William was immediately frightened by this, but Sarah insisted it was cute and funny. William wasn't so sure. The pictures continued over the following days, with SCP-1471 appearing at his school, at his bus stop, on his street, nearly everywhere he went. And then, the pictures started appearing as if they had just been taken the moment they were received. William and Sarah were both being sent the same type of nightmare-inducing images, and they tried to delete the app from their phone to stop them, but they couldn't find where the application was stored. Then, things got even worse. The creature started appearing to William and Sarah in the real world. William, as it turns out, was the lucky one, as SCP-1471 primarily appeared to him in reflective surfaces like mirrors, which he could cover with a curtain when he didn't want to see the strange dog skull face with its toothy grin staring back at him. Sarah was less fortunate. She saw the creature everywhere she looked, it always appearing just outside of her periphery, catching glimpses out of the corner of her eye, or feeling it looming over her and watching her as she slept. William has been able to cope with the appearances of 1471 even regarding it as a somewhat comforting presence at times. Sarah, sadly, was driven mad by the never-ending visions of the creature. Currently, the only known treatment to reverse the effects of SCP-1471 and the appearances of 1471 is to eliminate the individual's exposure to the images before 90 hours have passed after installing the app. Once those 90 hours have elapsed, though, it is too late, and SCP-1471 becomes a permanent presence in the individual's life. Thankfully, 1471 has thus far remained non-hostile and has not been shown to pose a threat to those afflicted by it, at least not a physical threat. All mobile devices that are found to have MalO version 1.0.0 installed on them are to be confiscated and analyzed for any potential information as to who might have created the application, as well as leads for other devices that may have been infected. Following this investigation, the device's batteries are to be removed and the device placed in Storage Unit 91 at Research Site 45. Additionally, all online application stores for mobile devices are to be monitored to prevent unsuspecting users from inadvertently downloading the anomalous software. Any individuals who are suspected of having downloaded SCP-1471 will have their device targeted by a self-uploading malware that can disable it until it's able to be seized by Foundation agents. Due to the unpredictable nature of the anomaly and the potential sentience of the software itself, SCP-1471 has been classified as Euclid by the SCP Foundation, and research into ways to hopefully one day contain the anomalous software is ongoing.
A kindly-looking old woman is carrying groceries into her home. When she closes the door, a crack forms in the wall, and a tile slides down off her roof, crashing to the ground and shattering. The next day, the local builder seems confused. He just fixed a similar problem a week ago at another house, and another the week before that. He'll patch this crack just like he did before and repair the roof, but as he does so, he can't help but think he'll be at another house with the same problem soon. Old people are like this sometimes, though, breaking things on purpose to get someone to come visit them. Oh well, as long as the money is right,
he'll keep doing the repairs. That evening, the old woman is in bed when she's woken up by something falling onto her face. A crack is opened in the ceiling right above her bed, and plaster is falling on her. What is happening to this house? She would have to call the builder again in the morning and let him know that it was getting worse. She gets up to clean the plaster dust off her face, but stops halfway to the door. Was that a noise she heard? It sounded like it was coming from downstairs. Another noise. She definitely heard something. Is someone in her home? "Hello?" she cries out. "Whoever you are, you better go. My husband is going to be home any moment, and he won't be happy." The noises seem to have stopped. Maybe she was imagining things. Who would rob a poor old woman, after all? She didn't have anything worth taking. She still needs to wash the plaster off her face, though. She listens for a moment, and when she doesn't hear anything else, she opens the bedroom door and screams. The next day, a child stands in front of the house with a look of shock. Was there an earthquake? How could a house end up like this? They ring the doorbell, but there's no answer. They knock on the door and are surprised to find that the door is open. "Grandma?" the child cries into the quiet house. No response. The child enters and looks around. The house is a mess. Chunks of plaster have fallen off the walls and ceiling. Shelves have fallen over, spilling their contents. And there's broken glass from shattered light bulbs everywhere. The boy looks up the stairs and can see that his grandmother's bedroom door is open and the light is on. "Grandma, are you up there?" Still no response. The child nervously starts up the stairs, gripping the railing tight. They quietly make their way to the bedroom and step into the sliver of light coming from the cracked door. The child pushes the door open to find their grandmother on the floor. Only, it isn't their grandmother. Whatever this is looks like their grandmother, but like she has been stretched and twisted, her body bent at angles where no joints exist. The child is paralyzed with fear, unable to do anything but stare. But the nightmare isn't over yet, because their grandmother is still alive. Sadly, reports like these are all too common in this small town that is plagued by attacks from SCP-783, also known as the Crooked Man. SCP-783 is an extremely dangerous anomalous creature that is currently plaguing the population of Tembe, a small rural village in Oxfordshire, England. Every 12 years during the fall and winter months, SCP-783 will engage in a period of hostile behavior that lasts for roughly 70 days, during which time it will target and attack people who are indoors and alone after sunset. Those targeted by SCP-783 will find that the building they are in rapidly deteriorates, causing damage and creating structural integrity issues. These often appear as cracks on the outside of the building that lead to the buildings taking on a crooked appearance. Unfortunately, while the SCP Foundation is aware of both the location and the periods within which SCP-783 operates, it has so far been unable to prevent any attacks. Additionally, the Foundation has yet to be able to produce either an image or even a physical description of SCP-783 due to the effect it has on recording equipment. Cameras set up to capture the anomaly produce only distorted or corrupted footage, leaving its appearance a mystery. Victims targeted by SCP-783 meet a fate that is, in many ways, worse than death. Their bodies will experience extreme deformations, as their bones suffer dozens of fractures and are stretched and twisted in various unnatural directions. They are then healed by the rapid generation of cartilage and the growth of extra skin to cover the new elongated limbs, leaving the victims a malformed knot of gnarled extremities. Some of the cases are quite severe, with one victim having just their forearm extended to over 2.4 meters, and another who was left stretched to 12.5 meters in height. Despite the gruesome injuries suffered, the majority of victims are still alive following the attacks, though they will more often than not be left completely paralyzed, in a persistent vegetative state, or both. 27 victims of SCP-783 are currently being held in a long-term care facility within a wing of a local hospital that was requisitioned by the Foundation specifically for the care and treatment of 783 victims. Like many of the anomalies that the SCP Foundation investigates and contains, many of the residents of Tembe appear to have some awareness of the Crooked Man, and the anomaly has become something of a local boogeyman. Researchers have even documented local school children singing a nursery rhyme that appears connected and may even explain the origins of the creature. It goes, "There lived a crooked man who made a crooked deal. He kept a crooked cane and his catch in crooked creel. He stole a crooked child who cried a crooked squeal, and that crooked little man was broken on the wheel." A month before a recent SCP-783 period of activity was to begin, a Class D personnel, D-209, was sent to live in a Foundation-owned home in the village. Audio and video recording equipment was set up throughout the house in case the D-Class was targeted, in the hopes that some information could be gleaned should something take place. 43 days after he began living in the house, something finally did. One evening while in bed reading a book, D-209 heard noises on the ground floor of the home. Cameras on the first floor experienced corruption and showed only a distortion moving through the house. When D-209 attempted to leave the bedroom and escape the home, they immediately encountered SCP-783. During a period of time that lasted roughly 5 hours, their bones were broken numerous times and reset over and over, leaving D-209 a twisted mass of flesh and bone. Strangely, at the exact same time that D-209 was being attacked, all 27 of the living prior SCP-783 victims in the hospital experienced violent seizures, despite most of them having been declared functionally brain dead and the rest being totally paralyzed. Also concurrent with the attack was a seismic event on the outskirts of town, and the details revealed by this event were both illuminating and extremely disturbing. Foundation personnel were dispatched to the site of the seismic activity to investigate and determine if it was connected to SCP-783 in any way. There, they found a small group of angry townspeople, perhaps frustrated by seemingly unending paranormal events in their town and the lack of progress that had been made to stop them. After a tense standoff, SCP Agent Collins fired her service weapon into the air, and the crowd quickly scattered. Now, free of distraction, the agents could begin their investigation in earnest. They immediately spotted several objects sticking out of the earth. Upon closer inspection, these were identified as elongated human toes. A dig team was sent to the site, and by the next day, a mass grave had been uncovered that was filled with the twisted mass of what appeared to be victims of SCP-783. Their mutated and drawn-out bodies were well preserved despite being buried directly in the ground, and had all been buried head down, with their arms extending deeper into the burial pit. As one researcher was attempting to take a tissue sample from one of the bodies, the ground beneath him gave way and he fell into the pit. He landed on the tangled mass of limbs which shifted under his weight, and he disappeared into the pit beneath them. Agent Collins immediately found a length of rope, tied it to her waist, and climbed into the pit with instructions to the on-site team to pull her back up when she signaled. Agent Collins descended into the pit beneath the bodies, and after several minutes, she was extracted, though without the missing researcher. At debriefing, she described how she found an anomalous location under the ground beneath 783's victims' corpses, and she was so rattled by what she saw that she was granted a temporary leave of absence. The Foundation had to know more, and a D-Class personnel was quickly selected for exploration of the underground anomaly. D-2172 was equipped with audio and video recording equipment, along with several scientific measurement tools, as well as a firearm, and was lowered down into the pit via crane. Their wired tether to the surface would both send the information they collected back, as well as serve as their lifeline to the surface. As D-2172 was lowered past the mass of corpses into the darkness, they experienced a sense of vertigo, before it was realized that the anomalous effects extended to gravity as well, which had become reversed, and that they would need to start climbing up in order to descend further into the pit. They soon climbed out of the hole surrounded by the reaching, extended arms of corpses, and emerged into an open world with an overcast sky. It looked exactly like the town of Tembe, with the same buildings present there as in our world. The world appeared to be uninhabited, though, with no sign of the missing SCP Foundation researcher. D-2172 began investigating the buildings and found them all to be empty as well, though they did unfortunately find signs of a struggle in one house, with what looked to be evidence of the missing researcher's demise. They continued exploring the area and found that the anomalous properties of the location extended to its borders too. and as the D-Class walked north out of the town, after several kilometers, they found that they were now somehow back at the southern edge of the town. D-2172 was ordered to return to the entry point, but as they walked, they were suddenly impeded by the deformed body of an SCP-783 victim that stretched across the road in front of them. D-2172 drew and fired their weapon at the entity, but it didn't react, and they were forced to retreat into the nearby woods. After several minutes, they stopped to rest when they spotted something else. In the distance, the D-Class saw what looked to be a giant white birch tree, and it was coming towards them. As the living tree approached, it became clear that it wasn't a tree at all. What looked like branches were extended bony fingers that it was using to walk. The long branch-like fingers were coming out of the top of the tree, where D-2172 could see their origin. These branches were the elongated fingers of the missing SCP Foundation researcher. D-2172 turned to run as the giant living tree chased them back into the town, firing their weapon at the creature whenever they had the chance, but was unable to stop it. The visual feed was soon lost as the audio continued to broadcast the screams of D-2172. But this wasn't the end of the expedition. The on-site team was surprised to witness after several hours that the tether was pulled on twice, the signal that it should be reeled in. A medical team was sent to the site since it was assumed that D-2172 would need immediate care, and the team began reeling in the line. After several minutes, they spotted the harness that should have been strapped to D-2172, but with nothing in it. They continued to pull, but the harness became stuck on the mass of corpses in the pit. They then noticed that it wasn't actually stuck. There was a hand holding onto the harness for dear life. It was D-2172's hand. The team kept pulling as D-2172's arm kept stretching out of the pit through a length of over 3 meters. But eventually, the resistance became too much. D-2172 lost its grip, and it was seen sinking back into the mass of corpses inside the pit. Following this expedition, it was determined that only special operations teams and mobile task forces would be used to explore the dangerous anomalous location in the future. At least 3 such expeditions have been undertaken, though the details remain classified for the time being, and perhaps it is for the best if they remain so. The SCP Foundation will continue to monitor the town of Tembe in an attempt to learn more about SCP-783 and hopefully discover a means to contain it and its related phenomena. Due to the difficulty in containing the anomaly, it has been classified as Keter, and a local building adjacent to the Tembe Hospital has been requisitioned and designated as Provisional Site 5 in order to accommodate the increased Foundation presence. As the SCP Foundation continues to research this mysterious and highly dangerous anomaly, any victims of SCP-783 are to be retrieved, their injuries cataloged, and then their bodies are to be incinerated.
A young man steps off the subway into the station. Like many others on their daily commute, he has headphones on and keeps his eyes glued to his phone as he messages his friends, plays mobile games, and watches videos. He takes the escalator up and out of the subway station, paying no mind to the rats that scurry past down the handrail. He steps out onto the street, head still never looking up from his phone. He's made the same trip hundreds, if not thousands of times, each step of his route home so burned into his mind that he could make this journey blindfolded. He turns a corner when, suddenly, he looks up. There's something different. In the split second before everything goes wrong, he realizes what it is. The grate he has stepped onto has just given way. The young man screams as he falls through the loose drainage grate in the sidewalk and is swallowed up into the bowels of the city. He is in the air for only moments before landing with a thud in the darkness below. The air is knocked out of him, but he's immediately aware that he didn't hit the ground as hard as he could have. Something must have broken his fall. It's too dark to see anything, though. He feels around for his phone. It must be around here somewhere. There, he's got it. The screen is cracked, but luckily, it still works. He turns on the flashlight and looks around. He appears to be in some kind of maintenance area below the sidewalk. The room is mostly empty. So what did he land on? He sits up and looks beneath him to find rats. A huge pile of rats. The young man screams and hops up as the rats squeak and scatter. He's in a panic, looking for a way to get out of here as quickly as possible, when he spots something else. There's a pile of dirty clothes in the corner of the room, or at least, he hopes it's a pile of dirty clothes. He slowly steps towards whatever it is. Even after his own harrowing ordeal, he still feels compelled to check it out. If he just found a body, the police will need to know, and he might even get his name in the paper. He can see the headline now. Local man finds missing heiress after heroically plunging into city's depths, inherits her millions for some reason. As he steps closer, he notices a cloud of gnats and flies buzzing around the pile. He slaps at his neck, killing some kind of biting fly. He's standing right next to the pile, but he still can't tell if this is a person or not. "Hello? Are you okay?" the young man asks. No response. He nudges the pile with his foot and jumps back. Did he feel something move? He sticks out his foot and nudges it again. The pile definitely moves this time. A man rolls over, his face covered in bug bites. He's moaning and reaching out, unable to see from his blind eyes that look like they have been gnawed out by rats. He opens his mouth and with one last gasp, appears to die right in front of the young man. The young man can only watch, frozen in fear, as a rat wriggles its way out of his open mouth and stares at the young man. The young man screams, turns, and runs. He doesn't know where he's going as he runs through the dark tunnels, but he finds a set of stairs and follows them up before bursting out of a door into the open air. He slams the door behind him. He's sure the man he saw in the tunnels died, but he's not taking any chances. He runs the rest of the way home, taking the stairs up to his apartment two at a time. He gets into his home and locks and bolts the door behind him. He leans against the door and tries to catch his breath, letting himself slide down to the floor. Finally, safe at last. He slaps at his neck again. Another fly. It must have been in his coat. He takes off his jacket and shirt, shaking them out, and is surprised to see more flies come out, but also other bugs like worms and cockroaches. He keeps shaking, panicking now, as more and more bugs fall from his clothes. He can see in the mirror on the wall that his body is covered in bites, but that's not what really has his attention. He gets close to the mirror, almost in a daze. This can't be right. He must be hallucinating. He looks in the mirror, reaches into his nose, and pulls out a cockroach. Flies crawl out of his mouth as he opens his mouth to scream, while behind him, rats start squeezing in under his door and crawling up his body, until he is completely covered in a living, writhing mass of vermin. Many of the anomalies studied by the SCP Foundation are cruel, horrific, and utterly mysterious. And this is one of the rare cases that embodies all three. Because this is SCP-027, also known as The Vermin God. SCP-027 is a phenomenon with strange and frightening properties that seems to affect one human subject at a time. When someone becomes a host to this anomaly, they will find that they are constantly surrounded by swarms of various types of vermin, parasites, and other pests. The human host has no ability to control or command these creatures, and in fact, the animals will often show aggression towards the host, biting and scratching at them as well as any other person who comes near. It is unknown what causes this effect, but once someone has become a host to SCP-027, the effect appears to be permanent. The swarms of vermin that follow the host do not appear instantly, and instead tend to follow the same pattern of showing up in waves. First, swarms of flying insects, including gnats and flies, will begin to form a cloud around the unlucky individual. Next, non-flying creatures such as lice, cockroaches, worms, spiders, and rats will begin to crawl on the host. The more time that passes, the more of all of these that will appear. Should the host try to leave the location, some of the pests will attempt to cling to them or follow behind, but many of the others will disperse. As soon as the host stops again, though, the process will repeat, and they will once again soon be surrounded by bugs and rodents. While there is no way for a host to rid themselves of the SCP-027 anomaly, the phenomenon has been known to be transferred to a new host, but only following the death of the first. It appears that 027 will continue to jump from host to host, and has likely done this many times in the past. Preliminary research into just how long SCP-027 has existed is ongoing, but early signs point to it having existed for potentially hundreds of years. SCP-027 was first identified by the Foundation when, in the 1990s, a male in his late 30s was found in an abandoned warehouse that was completely overrun with rats and insects. The man was filthy, malnourished, and covered in bites and scratches from a variety of pests. He also showed symptoms of deteriorating mental health,
likely caused by a combination of heavy substance abuse and sleep deprivation, neither of which were unexpected, given his horrendous circumstances. The anomalous properties of the subject were quickly recognized by field agents, and he was brought to an SCP Foundation site, where he unfortunately died while still under observation. An autopsy later revealed that over 70% of the man's body at the time of death consisted of a colony of rats that had nested in his abdomen and had been living there long enough to produce at least several generations of offspring. Around 6 days after the man's death, a Foundation security officer at the site where the man had been held reported to medical staff that he was experiencing breathing issues. He told them they began after he had been woken up by what he thought was a housefly crawling up his nose, and he did remember the fly coming back out. Later investigations would reveal that this statement was true, and that the fly laid a clutch of eggs in his sinus cavity as well. The security officer was placed under observation, and following the appearance of more types of vermin, he was classified as SCP-027-02. The man who died was then reclassified as SCP-027-01, and SCP-027 was redefined as an anomalous effect rather than one individual. It is still unknown just how SCP-027 attracts animals or why it chooses the ones it does to summon to its location. Neither SCP-027-01 or 02 have expressed any communication with any kind of entity or the feeling that one was present, and were unable to provide any additional information on the mysterious qualities of the anomaly. In an interview that took place not long after the security officer was identified as a host and placed into containment, he only described feeling dirty and itchy, like he needed a shower. He was deeply frightened by what was happening, and expressed the desire to rid himself of the anomalous effect as soon as possible so that he could rejoin his family. Research into the anomaly continues, but analysis of the current host has been inconclusive at best. The lack of understanding about just what SCP-027 is, how its anomalous effect functions, and how it jumps to a new host has led the SCP Foundation to classify it as Euclid. The current host for the anomaly is being held in a 5x5 meter cell with a raised grated floor that is connected to a strong vacuum system to trap any vermin that appear. Any creatures that are removed from the cell are to be incinerated, except for a small portion which are sent to research teams for analysis, though so far, all animals have appeared to be completely non-anomalous in nature. SCP-027-02 is to be monitored by at least 2 Foundation personnel at all times, and in the event that the subject exhibits any odd behavior or an unexpected species of animal is discovered in the cell, it is to be reported to a Level 4 personnel immediately. Security personnel assigned to 027 duty are to be vaccinated against all possible animal-borne diseases and have permission to subdue the subject with tranquilizers should the need arise. Should the subject appear to be experiencing a serious medical event, all high-value personnel should be moved far away from the current host to lower the chance of them becoming a host to the anomaly. And no personnel of Level 4 clearance or higher should approach within 200 meters of the subject at all, until SCP-027 and its strange properties are better understood. It's Saturday night, and a teenaged boy and girl are out on a date. They are strolling through a shopping mall, with plans to see a movie later at the theater attached to the mall. As they walk through the mall waiting for their show to start, the girl spots something. It's a photo booth. She excitedly grabs the boy's hand and pulls him inside. They close the curtain, insert a coin, and the machine comes to life, snapping a series of photos. The two exit the booth, but both seem to be a little off. It's getting close to showtime, though, so they start making their way to the movie theater. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the mall patrons, something is happening deep below the ground. The boy and girl exit the theater and walk arm in arm through the alley back toward the parking lot where the boy left his car. It's late now. The sun has long since set, and they're all alone. But they don't hear the footsteps behind them, or sense the pair of bodies that are following them, getting closer and closer. They get to the car. It's the only one left in the parking lot, and the boy takes out his keys to unlock the car when he fumbles and drops them to the ground. As he bends over to pick them up, he finally sees who has been following them. It's them. A pair of doppelgangers coming straight towards them. They look exactly like the boy and girl, except for their faces, which are horribly distorted, with strange lumps and no eyes or mouths. They look as though they were a drawing of a face that was somehow smudged out. The boy quickly gets the keys and grabs the girl, dragging her away from the creatures, who are now reaching for the boy and girl, grasping and clawing at their faces as they try to moan through their skin-covered mouths. He gets the car unlocked, and both manage to get inside. As the creatures bang on the windows, the boy starts the engine and drives away, leaving the abominations behind. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-715, also known as My Face That I May Be. SCP-715 is a take-your-own-photo brand photo booth, a product of the Sony Corporation made in the 1970s. This is a standard-looking photo booth, bearing a close resemblance to the many thousands of others that were in operation around the world at the time, with no anomalous visual characteristics at all. The only detail setting this machine apart from its countless brethren is a small metal tag which has been added to the back of the machine at some point, but a significant amount of wear has made it impossible to read what, if anything, was ever stamped on the tag. SCP-715's basic operation is also not anomalous in appearance. It will only activate if an individual sits inside and inserts the required coinage, at which point it will take a series of photos, just like a normal photo booth. The photos will also appear normal, though often some will be heavily distorted and obscure the subject's face in various ways. What truly sets this photo booth apart, however, is what happens outside of the booth when the pictures are taken. While the individuals who had their photos taken, classified as SCP-715-B instances, are able to exit the booth with no obvious effects, below them all, deep underground, something truly terrifying takes place. Underneath the mall is Site-81715, an extra-dimensional space which is accessible through a mall maintenance service door located in Sub-Basement 3, a door that does not appear on any of the mall's structural blueprints or in other records. The site consists of a giant cavernous room, which appears to have been hewn right out of the surrounding limestone. In the middle of the room is its most distinguishing feature, a large, deep pit. The walls of the pit are made of an unidentified substance, though it appears similar in both appearance and composition to human fat tissue. These fleshy walls secrete a powerful, corrosive substance, which makes examination and exploration of the pit particularly dangerous. When SCP-715 is activated in the mall above, a humanoid creature, classified as SCP-715-A, will appear in this pit. The bodies of these creatures are similar in appearance to the individuals who had their picture taken inside of 715, but their faces are radically different. Each has severe facial disfigurements and abnormalities, such as large growths, deep lacerations, and the absence of facial features. After appearing in the pit, these SCP-715-A instances will attempt to scale the fleshy walls of the pit and leave Site-81715. These instances are considered hostile, and Foundation security personnel are authorized to neutralize the creatures by any means necessary. Further research into how the SCP-715-A entities are formed and what exactly the pit is are ongoing, and it's not currently known how many 715-A instances exist down in the pit. With the entities who were able to climb out of the pit able to be relatively easily neutralized by security forces, SCP-715 was originally classified as safe. It was contained at its point of origin within the mall in Ohio, and Foundation personnel posing as mall employees would collect the photos printed by the machine. However, following additional discoveries, this classification necessitated changing. The Foundation began noticing inconsistencies with SCP-715-B entities after a researcher tested SCP-715 himself by sitting inside and having his photo taken. Soon after, he began acting in ways that were considered strange, such as when he turned down a promotion to a prominent position with better pay and perks for seemingly no reason, and when he skipped a mandatory site inspection for reality-bending anomalies. After noticing these strange behaviors, a Foundation research head had an anomalous optical enhancement device placed in the oddly acting researcher's bedroom and learned a surprising truth about the SCP-715-A and B entities. The Foundation had been killing the wrong ones. The device, which could remove anomalous reality-distorting effects from images, showed that the researcher was actually one of the creatures from the pit, with the telltale facial distortions. Following this shocking revelation, the research head used the same device on the creatures still inside the pit underneath the mall. They found that when the anomalous visual effects were removed from the distorted creatures who were trying to get out of the fleshy pit, that they were actually normal-looking humans. These SCP-715-A entities were the human beings who had entered the photo booth, had their pictures taken, and were somehow transported to the pit. They had been trying to escape their prison and tell the Foundation who they really were, but this only resulted in them being terminated by the on-site security forces. In order to fix this mistake, SCP-715 was hastily reclassified as Keter, and SCP-715 was removed from the mall in order to be stored in a secure locker at Site-19. Research personnel were no longer able to access SCP-715 without special authorization, and study of the interior was limited to what could be done via remote drone use only. The Foundation began rounding up all known instances of SCP-715-B, who were now the ones subjected to immediate termination. Foundation staff did manage to interview one 715-B instance, though, who had been previously believed to be a fellow Foundation researcher. It is unknown exactly what the researcher doppelganger said in that interview, but it must have been extremely serious, as the end result was another complete change in protocol. All attempts to contain and neutralize instances of SCP-715-B would immediately cease, since if there were as many out in the world as the doppelganger claimed, then ultimately, it would better maintain normalcy and ensure the secrecy of SCP-715 if they were allowed to go free. Sadly, the same was not the case for the SCP-715-A instances that still existed down in the pit. The researcher doppelganger advised that it would be unwise to remove them from the pit, and the current Foundation policy is that down in the pit is where they will remain. Following this interview, SCP-715 was reclassified once again as safe. The photo booth was also moved again, this time to a maximum security storage locker at Site-81, and Foundation personnel have been prohibited from interacting with SCP-715-B instances at all. However, there is one more piece of information about SCP-715, and it is only accessible to those with proper security clearance. Another Foundation agent was found to actually be an instance of SCP-715-B and taken into custody for observation. While under surveillance, it was discovered that this instance, classified as SCP-715-B7, was emitting low-level radiation that was somehow directed at Site-81-715, the location of the pit. During an autopsy of the creature, it was found that the radioactive emissions were actually increasing in output and frequency, and soon after, a power outage and containment breach occurred at the site where the autopsy took place. Following these events, the body of SCP-715-B7 disappeared, and video surveillance confirmed that several members of Foundation staff were responsible, all of whom had been involved in SCP-715 research. The staff members escaped with the body and left no other evidence behind, save for a single photo with the ominous text, "My ears that I may hear, my eyes that I may see, my mouth that I may speak. Do not touch my face." No other information regarding SCP-715 has been found, and many questions remain. Just what are instances of 715-B, and what do they want? Are they some kind of hive mind colony that reproduces through the use of a mysterious photo booth? What happens to those left behind in the pit? And what will they do should they ever get out?
A young man tosses and turns in bed. He adjusts his pillow and tries sleeping on his back, his side, his stomach, but nothing works. He rolls over to check the time, 3 a.m. This is the third night in a row he hasn't been able to fall asleep. He feels tired. He wants to sleep. But every time he closes his eyes and sleep starts to creep in, something happens. And suddenly, he's wide awake again. It's as if someone keeps flipping a switch in his brain to awake, and there's nothing he can do to stop it. It's affecting everything in his life. He can't concentrate in class, his work performance goes down the drain. Even his hobbies become completely unenjoyable. All he wants to do is sleep. His friends and family can tell something is wrong. It's as if he has become a different person, and they urge him to go see a doctor.
but the doctors tell him there's nothing they can do for him. He's perfectly healthy otherwise. He should try some natural remedies like valerian root and get more exercise. He has no idea how many days he's been awake now. 4, 5, maybe more. At this point, the lack of sleep isn't even the worst part. It's the hallucinations. Sometimes they're just a shadow dancing outside of his vision, but others are incredibly vivid, feeling more real than his now dreary life does. He had to stop going to work and class entirely since he can't concentrate for more than a couple of seconds at a time. His friends don't want anything to do with him, and who can blame them? He has uncontrollable mood swings and lashes out for no reason. He's tried every sleep remedy there is. He took the doctor's advice and exercised as hard as he ever has. But with never being able to sleep, he has no energy left. He's becoming a living zombie. He gets up out of bed but loses his balance and collapses to the floor. He tries to get up, but he can't. He'll just lie there for a while. He starts to drift away, and he readies himself for the jolt that always wakes him back up. But this time, it doesn't come. The wave of sleep that starts to wash over him feels different this time, though. It's heavier, more peaceful, and more permanent. Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-966, also known as Sleep Killer. SCP-966 is the designation that the SCP Foundation has given to a creature that belongs to a group of anomalous predatory beasts, standing 1.4 to 1.6 meters tall and weighing roughly 30 kilograms. These hairless humanoids have an elongated face, a mouth full of pointed needle-like teeth, and each of their hands has 5 razor-sharp claws that can be up to 20 centimeters in length. Though unlike humans and apes, they are digitigrade, meaning that they walk using only their toes. But you won't be able to see the horrible visage of SCP-966 under normal circumstances, as they are only visible under very specific lighting conditions. They can only be viewed under light that has a wavelength between roughly 700 and 900 nanometers, which is just at the edge of the light spectrum that's visible to humans, stretching into what's known as infrared light. The only exception to this is if their skin, muscles, or organs have suffered from 2nd or 3rd degree burns, in which case, the affected areas of their body will show up under a greater spectrum of wavelengths that are visible to the human eye. Though frightening to look at, SCP-966 are actually quite weak physically, with very low muscular density. Their bones are hollow, similar to birds, and while their claws may be incredibly sharp, they are also easily broken, making them unsuited for use in combat. Additionally, they do not rest through sleep, but will, at seemingly random times, stop all movement and fall into a rest period that lasts roughly 3 to 5 minutes, after which they are able to resume their normal behavior. With all of these physical shortcomings, how did SCP-966 gain a reputation as such a fearsome hunter? The secret lies in their ability to emit bursts of a previously unknown type of wave. Hunting either alone or in pairs, SCP-966 uses this wave to inhibit its prey's ability to enter any of the restful sleep stages, and also stops the ability to microsleep. These waves have been observed to be effective at up to 20 meters, though tests have shown that they can be blocked by post-transition metals, of which lead appears to be especially effective. SCP-966 hunts and feeds on medium to large-sized animals, which includes humans. And once their quarry has been targeted by the sleep-inhibiting waves, the effect is permanent, with no method having yet been discovered that will allow them to regain the ability to sleep. Experiments have shown that unconsciousness can be induced in other ways, such as with the use of general anesthesia, though these methods have ultimately proven to be ineffective, since although the victim is unconscious, they are still not receiving any of the restful benefits of sleep while in that state. The effects of sleep deprivation on humans, both mentally and physically, are devastating. Symptoms can begin setting in after just 24 hours that can include mood swings, memory issues, and sensory impairment. After 2 to 3 days, the body's hormones become deregulated, and bodily functions like hunger, thirst, and temperature fluctuate wildly as cognitive abilities start to dramatically decline. Hallucinations, paranoia, and fits of rage are common, and the risk of death from sleep deprivation increases with each day that passes without sleep. And this is exactly what SCP-966 wants. After surreptitiously sending a burst of sleep deprivation waves at their victim, they will then stalk their prey until lack of sleep finally leads to total incapacitation, at which point SCP-966 consumes them. SCP-966 have proven to be both extremely quiet and agile when hunting. However, they have actually been observed intentionally making threatening noises around their prey, presumably to further increase their already elevated stress levels, and potentially hastening their mental degradation. On rare occasions, they will even physically assault their victim to further degenerate their mental and physical health. Some of SCP-966's prey will experience especially intense hallucinations and bouts of rage, which is theorized to be caused by prolonged exposure to multiple instances of their sleep-stopping waves. Why some victims are exposed to multiple waves when a single instance has been shown to be 100% effective is unknown, and it's hypothesized that they may only engage in this behavior when especially hungry, to try and speed up the process, though others have put forth the theory that SCP-966 may take some perverse form of joy in seeing its victims suffer prior to expiring. Wild instances of SCP-966 have been found across the globe, and while the SCP Foundation has been successful in thinning their numbers, they still exist in high enough numbers to pose a serious threat to humanity. For these reasons, they have been assigned the classification Euclid. Mobile Task Forces Iota-1 and Iota-2, codenamed the Dream Hunters and Air Chasers respectively, are continually monitoring for any reports of sudden or violent deaths related to sleep deprivation in order to identify and neutralize the remaining instances of wild SCP-966. 4 SCP-966 specimens, 3 males and 1 female, have been acquired by the Foundation, and they are currently contained in a 10 by 10 meter room that is lined with lead and equipped with infrared security cameras. Each specimen is fed 20 kilograms of meat each month, and in the event that the female specimen gives birth, the new specimen is to be taken for observation and study before being disposed of prior to reaching maturity.
A storm rages outside of the little old house as inside, a little old woman bounces a little baby on her little old knee. The baby coos and laughs as the old woman makes funny faces and noises for the child, trying to keep it entertained as they wait for his parents to return from their much-needed night out by themselves. The old woman herself needs a rest now, though. She's forgotten how exhausting it can be to watch a child. Okay, that's enough. It's time for both of us to take a little nap before your parents get back. She gets up and takes the baby into a nearby room that looks as though it was a nursery at one time, but it hasn't been used for many years. As she goes to set the child into the crib, a strong gust of wind blows through the room. She places the baby down and rushes to the window and closes it shut. It must have been left cracked open by mistake. Brr, the room is cold from the wind, but she has just the thing to fix that. She moves to a small closet and opens the creaky door. The little old woman strains to reach up to the top shelf and feels around. Ah, there it is. She pulls down a baby blanket, a soft baby blue with colorful animals printed on it. It looks as though it's been up there for a long time, and she gives it a good shake before walking back to the crib. Look what we have here. It's your daddy's own blankie. She gives it another shake. There we go, good as new. She leans into the crib and wraps the small helpless child in the blanket before giving him a gentle kiss on the forehead. Now you get some sleep. Your mommy and daddy will be back before you know it, and we want to show them what a good babysitter Grammy is, don't we? That way I get to see you all the time. The little old woman switches off the light and exits the room, leaving the door cracked just a few inches. She heads back to the couch and plops down on it. Almost as soon as she does, though, the baby starts crying. With a sigh, she gets back up and goes back to the nursery. What's the matter, little dear? She says as she turns the lights on. Oh no, she rushes to the crib. You've kicked your blanket off. You must be freezing. She grabs the blanket from the end of the crib and tucks it around the baby once again. There you go, that's better. The old woman leaves the room and quietly closes the door shut, leaving it open just a few inches. The moment she turns around to go back to the couch, though, the crying starts again. With a sigh, she opens the door and goes back into the room. Once again, the blanket is stuffed at the end of the crib where the baby has kicked it off. Fine, don't want a blanket? That's fine. She picks the baby up out of the crib and rocks him in her arms until it stops crying. She sets him back in the crib. There you go.
No blankets, just please get some sleep. Grammy's tired. The old woman takes the blanket out of the crib and leaves the room. She closes the door most of the way and, incredibly, this time the child remains silent. The old woman resumes her place on the couch and starts to yawn. Just as she does, the wind outside picks up and howls loudly. The old woman shivers. She looks next to her and spots the baby blanket. She picks it up and examines the cute animal print, remembering when her own son was a baby wrapped in it. She smiles at the happy thought and throws the blanket around her shoulders. She leans back on the couch and finds that her eyes are growing very heavy. She'll rest them for just a moment. She won't fall asleep. She'll just rest. Mom, it's us. We're back. Thanks again for... The couple both scream when they enter the house to find that the old woman is lying face down on the floor in a pool of blood. The source of the blood is obvious. Chunks of flesh from her shoulders and upper back have been torn out, leaving jagged holes, as if she were mauled by an animal. As the man runs to the old woman, trying to do anything he can to help her, the woman runs to the nursery to find that the baby is sleeping peacefully in his crib. The woman picks up the child, tears streaming down her cheeks, and returns to the living room to see her husband kneeling beside his dead mother. Both the husband and wife are so shocked by what they have found that neither notices the baby blanket lying on the couch, or that the cruel, blood-covered mouth on it is slowly fading from view until it disappears completely. There is little in life that is more comforting than a favorite blanket. Perhaps you've had the same one since you were a child, or you have a heavy one that you like to wrap yourself in when you're feeling down, or maybe it's just one that's especially fluffy and warm that you'd do anything to keep. Today's anomaly plays on those very feelings, using them against its victims to become one of the more insidious predatory anomalies in the SCP Foundation archives. This is SCP-799, also known as the Carnivorous Blanket. SCP-799 is a type of creature that can vary in shape, size, and appearance, but, as the name implies, always takes the form of a blanket of some kind. The exact material the anomaly is made out of is unknown, but it is a very soft fiber that in many ways resembles a high-quality merino wool blend, though one that retains heat even more effectively than its natural counterpart. SCP-799's weight can vary from between half a kilogram all the way to 6 kilograms, and while examples have been found in nearly every color imaginable, it seems predisposed towards pastels and will frequently have patterns featuring stylized, friendly depictions of various animals. Both the pastel colors and the childish patterns are especially common in instances of SCP-799 that weigh less than 2 kilograms and would colloquially be known as baby blankets. While SCP-799 is undoubtedly a living organism, there is some debate as to whether it is itself an animal or perhaps a type of fungal colony. Instances of 799 are incapable of locomotion, lying motionless for long periods of time, and require little in the way of nutrition. What small amount they do need, they appear to be able to gain almost entirely from the organic particles present in normal household dust, such as animal dander and dead human skin cells. The blanket feeds via a series of minute, filter-feeding mouth-like structures that are spread across the surface of the creature, which wait for nutrients to fall into them, not unlike a sponge on the ocean floor. Instances of SCP-799 can survive for quite a while in this state, and one specimen was noted as having lived for multiple years in a damp attic, subsisting entirely on the small organic particles that would drift down from the rafters above. Should an instance of SCP-799 be forced to go for long periods of time without a source of nutrition, though, like when, for example, it is placed inside of a sealed closet or drawer, it will begin to undergo certain physical changes, which result in it metamorphosing into its predatory form. These changes aren't noticeable from only casual observation and consist of the blanket converting its many filter-feeding mouths into a single, large one that is lined with multiple rows of extremely sharp teeth. The blanket creature also develops a new form of tissue inside its cloth-like structure, one that is similar to muscle and capable of contracting and squeezing. Once its metamorphosis is complete, the instance of SCP-799 will lie in wait for an unsuspecting creature to cover themselves with it or wrap it around their body. Once they do, the blanket will bide its time until they enter a state of rest, usually waiting for them to fall asleep entirely, at which point its feeding phase will begin. Once the creature has detected that its victim is dormant, it will use its newly formed muscle to latch onto them, holding them in place as it opens its tooth-lined maw. It will begin to bite at its confined prey, tearing off several kilograms of flesh, bone, and any other organic material it can, swallowing it, and converting it into a thin slurry that it spreads through its body almost immediately. This traumatic, violent process nearly always leads to the victim dying of blood loss. Within 10 minutes of the attack, the mouth on SCP-799 will have been completely reabsorbed, leaving no signs that it is anything other than a normal, everyday blanket, though one which now mysteriously weighs several kilograms more than it did before. By 40 minutes after the attack, the entire digestive system within SCP-799 will have demetamorphosed back into its original form, with a single digestive tract being changed once again to the many dispersed filter-feeding mouths. While SCP-799 is more than happy to feed on any warm-blooded animal, including humans, it shows no interest in cold-blooded ones or inanimate objects. It appears then that its senses may be limited to only touch and heat, using those as signs that it is now wrapped around a potential meal. Adding to the strangeness of SCP-799 is that it reproduces through budding, like flatworms and corals. When it has absorbed enough nutrients and sufficiently increased its mass, either very slowly through filter feeding or rapidly via its carnivorous phase, it will begin to take on a quilt-like appearance. Over several weeks, one of the quilt squares will puff up and slide off the blanket. This new, smaller instance will resemble a doily or a throw pillow, until it too begins to feed and grow. The new instance is a perfect clone of its parent, identical in every way, and it will eventually grow to a similar size and begin its own reproductive cycle. It is unknown exactly how long it takes SCP-799 to reach full maturity, but the current best guess is that when kept in its filter-feeding phase, an instance will reproduce every 50 to 60 years. Instances of SCP-799 are quite prevalent across the planet, and the SCP Foundation currently has hundreds of examples in containment. Unfortunately, it is unknown just how many still exist in the wild, as it is very difficult to identify instances, with one of the only reliable means being through genetic testing. Should any instances be located, though, they are to be destroyed immediately, as the Foundation already has a large enough population in containment for research purposes, and they pose too much of a risk both in terms of harm and exposure to the general public. SCP-799 has been classified as Euclid, and each instance is kept in its own separate biocontainment cell at Biosite 66. Dust is regularly collected from the on-site D-Class personnel dorms and is sprinkled over the blankets regularly to keep them in their filter-feeding state, though only just enough to hopefully maintain their size and not allow them to reproduce. Should any small cloth objects appear in their containment lockers, it is to be removed immediately and contained separately. SCP-799 isn't the only predatory creature that resembles a cloth good in Foundation containment, and research into possible connections to SCP-1626, the oversized gray-hooded sweatshirt that sends penetrating fibers into anyone unlucky enough to put it on, is ongoing.
Hello everyone, DrBob here. I know you're not used to seeing me here at the start of videos, but that's because today we have an extremely pressing matter to attend to, one that cuts to the deepest core of one of the SCP Foundation's deadliest contained anomalies, SCP-096, the Shy Guy. It's a creature that needs no introduction, because it probably haunts all of your nightmares already. Close your eyes and picture it in your mind's eye, that gaunt face with the slack jaw and the lifeless white eyes. The face you hope never to see as long as you live. The pale skin pulled tight against bone, those impossibly long, gangly limbs. It sits there in its airtight containment cube, covering its face and quietly sobbing, always sobbing, as though cursing something beyond even its own understanding. Perhaps, when thinking about SCP-096, you feel a pang of sympathy mixed with the terror. After all, this anomaly is no sadist. Why would a sadist cry as it kills, like SCP-096 does? You're not alone in asking this question. I've spent many a night poring over classified files with an ever-freshening pot of coffee, trying to piece together the answers. SCP-096 is considered one of the most dangerous Euclid-class creatures in containment, and yet, so little about it is known, beyond its capability to do great harm whenever someone is unlucky enough to see its face and send it into its rage state. How did this happen? It's a question for the curious, like you or me, and after months of strenuous research, I believe I may have an answer. Whether you choose to believe it is up to you. Just be warned, when you hear what I believe to be the heartbreaking, tragic origin of this terrifying and pitiful monster, you may never be able to look at him the same way again. Not that looking at him should ever be high on your list of priorities. It begins in a tavern in a small Nepalese village a few miles away from the Chinese border, where Mount Everest, the world's tallest mountain above sea level, waits. Its mere existence is like a challenge to the brave and foolhardy. "Conquer me," it seems to whisper. "Conquer me, and declare yourself above all those I have conquered. Become a god among men." It's always whispering like this, but few, in the grand scheme of things, can actually hear it. And sadly for him, the explorer is among those few. He's sitting in one of the tavern's many cozy nooks, picking away at a plate of mutton curry while sipping from a brass bowl of white chiang, a popular local drink. The explorer, living up to his name, has come a long way to get here. The rest of the village locals in the tavern eye him with a variety of knowing glances. They've seen so many like him before, smug smiles and puffed chests, thinking they'll be able to count themselves among the exalted few who've conquered the mountain to end all mountains. The bodies of many men like this are still frozen to the mountain's surface. One brave local, an older man who can speak English fluently, slides in across the table from the explorer. The old-timer tells him that whatever he thinks he'll find up on the mountain, honor, glory, recognition, he'd be better off searching for it elsewhere. Death awaits on the icy rocks above. The explorer, young, fit, and still feeling mighty smug, replies that death is there for the people who haven't worked hard enough, who haven't prepared. He's scaled other mountains before, all across the globe, from Scotland to Peru. Everest would hold no surprises for him, just a new, compelling challenge. The old man is, as you could probably imagine, unamused by the explorer's hubris. "All confidence and bluster now," he says with his thin, raspy voice. "But what will you say when you're face to face with the king?" The explorer, assuming that this king refers to the mountain itself, smiles and replies, "I'll ask him for his crown." With that, the old man leaves, content that he at least tried to dissuade the explorer from going on this doomed journey. If nothing else, his conscience would be clear now. He had done all that he possibly could. The explorer, not bothered by the grim prophecies of superstitious locals, finishes his curry and chiang and retires to the room he rented upstairs. He's so excited. Tomorrow, it will finally be time. All his months of training will pay off. He will climb to Mount Everest's peak. It would be an achievement to last a whole lifetime, one he would never ever forget, no matter how much he wants to. The next day, the tip of his ice axe cleaves into the mountainside as he grunts, strains, and pulls himself up another few feet. He's about 2,000 meters up, and every additional meter is fighting him. It's the bitterest cold he's ever known, a freeze so deep it makes his incredibly expensive thermal-locking clothes feel like he's wearing wet, one-ply toilet paper. But the pain doesn't matter. The cold doesn't matter. He finds it exhilarating. Of course, just as the old man had warned, death could be waiting for him on this mountain. But the truth is, the explorer has never felt more alive. He winches himself up a few feet more, trying to regulate his breathing as his icy fingers, wrapped in thick gloves, struggle to find purchase on what feels like a sheer cliff face. There are many times when he's supporting his full body weight with only his hands. It often takes the kind of Herculean strength that only a lifetime of training can give you. After all, there's no room for error on Mount Everest. One wrong move, and you're either plummeting to your death or becoming a permanent frozen fixture of the mountainside. And because Everest is so dangerous, nobody comes to collect the bodies of dead mountaineering hopefuls. Their corpses, coated in often colorful winter jackets, litter the mountain. Some look at them as a tragic warning. Other, more morbid mountaineers use them as mile markers for their own more successful ascents. Whether the explorer would be lucky or become just another dead, frozen mile marker is still entirely up to chance. He climbs for a few more hours, pushing past his body's complaints, his physical limitations, until he reaches a well-earned plateau. Here, he establishes a small base camp and eats some of his rations. The area is thankfully guarded enough to keep out the worst of the sub-zero winds, so he can at least get some sleep without freezing to death. Mount Everest cannot be conquered today, and even someone with the explorer's bravado wouldn't dare to try. But as he settles down to sleep for the night, he can't help but look up, and the enormity of what stands before him he finds utterly terrifying. The mountain just keeps going and going and going, stretching up into the misty heavens, like the tip would only be a short jump from the moon. For the first time, the explorer begins to genuinely wonder, will I scale this mountain? Or will I die on it? What he never even considers is that there may be a third option that's so much worse. Over the next few days, he keeps climbing further and further. Hundreds, then thousands of meters pass under him as he breaks past even the boundaries biology seemed to set for him. He's impossible to deter, an engine of pure, burning willpower, going because he knows he cannot stop. Because he knows that if he throws in the towel now, it will have all been for nothing. He'll be just another failure, one speck among billions. He'll have no meaning, no legacy. He'll just be another average Joe, forgotten. And that honestly scares him even more than the prospect of freezing to death up here. Eventually, even though it costs him almost everything to do it, he reaches 8,000 meters, an area known as the Death Zone, where it's believed to be impossible for humans to acclimate. This is the thin, rarefied air that few have been permitted to breathe, and he's seen so many brightly colored mile markers on the way to here. The ground is slippery, and the air chews into the explorer's skin, but he knows he's made it this far. Less than 1,000 meters from the peak now, he has almost conquered the mountain. So you can only imagine how surprised he feels when he sees another mountaineer walking down the side of the mountain towards him with an eerie kind of casualness. He's wearing standard mountain climbing gear, including white thermal pants and a hooded coat, zipped up to the chin. The explorer can't make out the stranger's face beyond the pair of thick, black goggles he's wearing over his eyes. What the hell is going on here? The second the stranger's eyes fall upon him, he feels a frightening sensation. The bite of the cold is gone. The chilling winds can't reach him. Instead, he feels warm, cozy, and content, like he's sitting in front of a warm fire in a well-insulated log cabin. In any other circumstance, these sensations might be welcomed, but a seasoned mountaineer knows that this is actually one of the worst things you can feel. It means that death is creeping in, and your body is opening the front door and welcoming it. And if this stranger is causing that feeling, then one thing is certain. He's bad news. The explorer wants to turn and run, but he finds that he can't. It's almost as though he's frozen in place, entranced by the warm, inviting feeling that the other mountaineer seems to exude as he gets closer and closer. That's when the explorer notices something strange about him. Something is glowing through his goggles, like hot embers, burning a bright, luminous orange. Are those eyes? Dear God, are those his eyes? The explorer can feel their terrible stare, literally feel it. It hurts to be looked at by this monster. Yes, that's what it is. A monster in the shape of a man.
Why are you here, mortal?
Comes a booming voice from the inhuman mountaineer.
Do you wish to challenge me?
The explorer can't form words. He's quaking, his body acknowledging the cold that his mind can't, as those two glowing eyes bore into him.
Speak,
the stranger commands.
Who? What are you?
The explorer forces out between chattering teeth. The stranger laughs.
I am the king of the mountain.
Though to the SCP Foundation, he's better known as SCP-1529, and he's the worst possible thing you can run into while trying to scale Mount Everest. The explorer remembers his conversation with the old man in the tavern, the question he asked, "What will you say when you're face to face with the king?" And his own foolish answer, "I'll ask him for his crown." Now, really, truly face to face with the king of the mountain, all the poor terrified explorer can do is whimper and beg for mercy. "Please," he says, the tears freezing on his cheeks as they fall. "I just wanted to climb." The king of the mountain gives another booming laugh, his eyes burning.
Then you will climb, he says, and climb, and climb, and climb.
The king of the mountain must have wielded truly unspeakable power to do what he does next. With a simple nod, the explorer is suddenly hanging off the mountainside, his fingers digging into the craggy rocks. The only thing supporting his weight. It was like being back at square one all over again, except with added pain, terror, and cold so deep he can feel his bones rattling. And all the while, he feels those eyes upon him, those burning, fiery eyes, staring with absolute malice. He keeps climbing. Every time he reaches a plateau, a place where he might camp and find even momentary comfort, the king of the mountain is already waiting there, staring that horrible stare. And just like that, the explorer was climbing again, wind whipping against him like 40 lashes from a cat o' nine tails. That, coupled with the endless strain of the climb on his muscles, is the worst agony he's ever felt. And yet, he never dies. Even though he hasn't eaten in days, weeks, months, years, he never, ever dies. He just fulfills the same torturous loop over and over again. It's like the King of the Mountain is just keeping him alive for his own amusement, a toy that's impossible to break. But while the Explorer never breaks, as time goes on and the torments never cease, he does begin to change, like rock being molded by the tide. First, from the endless stress, his hair falls out. His skin goes pale from the lack of sun. His body becomes thin and wiry from starvation and malnourishment. The endless physical strain even warps his limbs. His arms and legs begin to stretch, his body becoming elongated and grotesque. All the way through this horrific, dehumanizing ordeal, the King of the Mountain stares at him. One day, the Explorer, now changed, reaches a plateau, and as can be expected, the King of the Mountain stares at him with his burning eyes. The Explorer cowers and covers his face with his hands, sobbing from exhaustion. He just wants the King of the Mountain to look away, to leave him be. He babbles incoherently. He doesn't want to be seen anymore. His pain simply makes the King of the Mountain laugh.
I gave you your wish,
the Mountain King says, his voice oozing with contempt.
You climbed, didn't you? You thought that your climbing would elevate you, make you more than human. But now, you're so much less. Our business concludes here. I'm tired of playing with you.
And with that, the king is gone. The Explorer is alone, stranded among the snow and the whipping winds of the death zone, but very much alive. He's finally able to go. At long last, after what felt like an eternity, he's escaped. When the Explorer arrives in the village again, he's not the Explorer at all. It's been years since he went missing on the mountain. The old man who had warned him not to go up onto Mount Everest had passed peacefully in the interim. The other members of his small village would not be afforded the same luxury. Instead, the Explorer stumbled back through the village limits, still covering his face. The only sounds he can hear are the wailing wind and his own pitiful sobbing. Everything hurts. He's so terribly afraid. He needs somebody to help him. Why will nobody help him? The sun begins to rise, and the village shakes itself awake. People leave their homes to go about their daily tasks. None of them are expecting to see a monster loping through their streets. A pale, gangling monstrosity, stretched and hairless. It engenders a mix of fear and curiosity as it stumbles around, audibly sobbing with a loud, warped voice. It's like nothing any of them have ever seen before, like something out of a myth or a folk tale. But for the monster that was once the Explorer, it's so much worse. At first, he thinks that the villagers might be there to help him, but then he sees their eyes, that same intense, burning fire pit orange as the King of the Mountain, that same horrible gaze that the Explorer thought he'd escaped when he'd left the mountain, the gaze that meant pain, torment, and madness. Even when he tries to cover his face, when he wails at them to go away in words that make sense to no one but him, he can still feel those terrible eyes on him. Is he still on the mountain? Is he still at the mercy of the Mountain King? Are these all just illusions or projections, another awful trick? What did he ever do to deserve this kind of torment? Was the crime of wanting to climb a damn mountain worth this kind of everlasting suffering? Did it earn him the gaze of all these monstrous eyes? The Explorer begins to feel his anguish being replaced by another feeling, rapidly rising rage, the kind of pure, blistering hatred that inexorably leads to one result: violence. First, he screams, then they scream, and finally, the killing begins. The creature that had once been the Explorer leaves no stone unturned. Even when they try to run away, he still feels their eyes on him. He needs to kill them all, to annihilate them quickly, leave no trace. It's the only way he can feel anything close to at peace again. It becomes a kind of terrible chain reaction. The sound of the horrors going on in the street only entices more to come outside and see what's going on, to look at the creature causing all this carnage, to see its face. They have no idea that this very action is dooming them. And within the hour, the village is empty, save for one creature, the creature that had once been the Explorer, now just afraid, confused, and alone. He will always be alone.
The anomaly that will soon be known as SCP-096 simply bows its head and weeps.
A group of friends are driving down the highway late at night. They're on their way home from a concert, and after the long night of dancing and partying, all of them are feeling quite tired. The radio is turned off, and after so much loud music, the silence is refreshing. No one is talking at all, and in fact, the driver notices that both his girlfriend sitting next to him, as well as his friend in the back seat, have fallen asleep. The driver tries to make sure that he doesn't do the same as the car moves down the long stretch of straight, empty highway. The driver's eyes start to grow heavy, though. He can feel the weight of sleep starting to press on him. He turns the radio on at a low volume, but that only staves off the drowsiness for a moment. He can't fight the approach of sleep any longer, and his eyes start to close. As he drifts off to sleep, his foot presses down slightly more on the accelerator. The driver's head slumps to the side as the car gains speed and begins to pull to the right of where it crosses the white line marking the edge of the highway. The tires dip off the road into the dirt, and the sudden change causes the driver to jerk back awake. He quickly swerves the car back onto the road. The sudden jolt causes both the passengers to wake up. Is everything okay? The driver tells them that he just swerved to avoid an animal in the road. That's right, nothing to be worried about. They can go back to sleep. As both of his friends close their eyes and try to go back to sleep, the driver spots something. Lights have appeared in his rearview mirror. It's a pair of headlights. He didn't notice a car pulling out or speeding up behind him, but he must have missed it when he was dozing off. His heart is still racing from when he drifted off the road, and he's trying to regain his composure, but it's about to get a whole lot harder, because when he looks in the mirror again, he sees that the telltale red and blue lights of a police cruiser have lit up behind him. "Oh crap, oh no," the driver says out loud. Everyone is awake now and aware of the cop behind them. They grow nervous and start freaking out. Not all the activities they had partaken in at the concert were, strictly speaking, technically legal in this state. "What do we do?" the driver asks. "You've got to pull over," says his girlfriend. The cop car's sirens come on. This is serious. But then something strange happens. They hear a voice in the car, coming over the radio. It's too quiet to hear, but when the driver turns up the volume, the message comes through loud and clear. It's a gruff voice that keeps repeating the same phrase over and over. "You better run." How is this message coming over the radio? They don't know, but the passenger in the back seat agrees with the voice. They've got to try and run. They have to get out of here. The driver's girlfriend is screaming to pull over. The cop car speeds up and is right behind them now, almost on their bumper. Its lights flashing and sirens blaring. The driver doesn't know what to do. Should he pull over? Should he try to run? Everyone is yelling. He starts to push down on the accelerator, but then thinks better of it. There's no way this old car can outrun a cop. Finally, he makes the decision to brake and starts to pull the car to the side of the road. The police car comes to a stop behind them. The sirens are off, but the bright lights are almost blinding. They sit in the car and await their fate. But nothing happens. The car is just sitting there behind them. After what feels like a long while, the door of the cop car finally opens. The three passengers watch silently as a highway patrol officer steps out and begins approaching their car. The driver tells everyone to relax, that this is going to be just fine, but the passenger in the back starts to panic. He can't get arrested. If he does, it will mean that he loses his scholarship. He'll get kicked out of school. His whole life will be over. The highway patrol officer reaches the car. Despite it being late at night, he's wearing dark aviator sunglasses that cover half of his face. He stands in front of the door to the car and waits. The driver, feeling nervous and afraid, rolls down his window. The police officer doesn't move or react, though. He just keeps standing next to the car. Good evening, officer," the driver says. No response. The driver turns and looks at his girlfriend in the front seat, but all she can do is shrug. He turns back to the highway patrolman. "Did we do something wrong?" There's another long pause, but then the patrolman finally reacts. He bends over and leans in close, sticking his head practically through the open window and putting his tight-lipped face right next to the driver's. Do you want my license and registration?" the driver asks. The patrolman doesn't respond. He reaches up and slowly grabs the side of his dark aviator sunglasses. He pulls them down, and the driver finds himself staring into a pair of bright, red, glowing eyes. Evil eyes.
Everyone in the car starts to scream as the thing standing in front of them opens its own mouth to reveal a big, black, gaping hole with no gums or teeth, a horrifying void in its face that screams right back at them. As you may have already deduced, this was no normal traffic stop, and certainly not a normal highway patrol officer. No, the entity that this group of young adults encountered that evening was one that dozens before them had the same misfortune of running into, and one that the SCP Foundation is actively trying to stop from engaging in its frightening and dangerous behavior. This is SCP-973. SCP-973 is not one, but actually two separate entities. The first, designated SCP-973-1, is a police cruiser that appears to be a model similar to those used by actual state troopers during the early 1970s, and its condition is much like you would expect for a well-used, nearly 50-year-old vehicle, with much of it being in an advanced state of disrepair. Eyewitness accounts of SCP-973-1 have described the police car as having numerous dents on the doors and hood, cracks in the windshield, multiple rust spots, and a rear bumper that looks to be held on with duct tape. The vehicle's driver and sole occupant has been designated SCP-973-2. This humanoid figure has an appearance that resembles a Caucasian male in his late 40s. It is dressed in the state trooper uniform that, like 973-1, also looks to have come from the early 1970s. And eyewitnesses have described him as being slightly overweight, balding, and sporting a handlebar mustache. Both the anomalous car and its driver will appear at night in a specific location along a particular U.S. highway. It is unknown exactly what will cause SCP-973 to show up on this road, but Foundation researchers have hypothesized that its manifestation may be triggered when a vehicle accelerates over a certain speed. You may think you're safe, then, if you stay below a certain speed, but unfortunately, you'd be wrong. It's unknown exactly what speed limit infraction will lead to SCP-973's appearance, with reports ranging from 35 miles per hour all the way to 70. But when it does occur, the driver will find that they are now a target. SCP-973 will materialize roughly half a kilometer behind the targeted vehicle and will approach them at a high rate of speed. SCP-973-1 sirens will turn on and its lights will flash, as it also somehow broadcasts a message into the targeted car that is picked up on the car's radio, a message that urges the driver to run, often accompanied by several expletives. In most cases, the targeted vehicle will abide by the instructions over the radio and begin to flee, though it's unlikely that this is due to any mimetic effect. Rather, it would seem that most run out of pure terror. SCP-973 will then pursue the targeted car, leading to a high-speed chase. No matter how fast the targeted car is, though, the SCP-973-1 police cruiser will always be faster. And it typically takes no more than 6 minutes for them to be overtaken. SCP-973 seems to have no qualms about ramming into the fleeing car, which likely accounts for the extreme damage present on the patrol car. While it is unclear exactly what happens once 973 forces the targeted vehicle to stop, either through their own choice or by being rammed off the road, the results are quite disturbing. The vehicle that fled will later be located somewhere near SCP-973's spawning location, usually within roughly 6 kilometers of the road. Whether the vehicles that are found that far from the road drove there in a panic or were somehow transported there by anomalous means isn't clear. What is clear is that the occupants of the cars met a truly grisly fate. Their bodies will show signs of extreme violence and assault, including evisceration, and some have been so badly maimed and mangled that visual identification was impossible. The vehicles themselves are badly damaged, showing signs of impact from another vehicle, and severe burn damage is often present in the interior. So far, over 34 individuals and 19 vehicles have been designated as victims of SCP-973, though it is likely that the true number is much, much higher. Perhaps most terrifying of all is that some of the victims survived. The Foundation has recovered 5 individuals from sites of SCP-973 attacks, who, in addition to their gruesome physical injuries, also suffer from varying levels of ongoing mental trauma. But why not just destroy the road that SCP-973 appears on, you ask? Well, the Foundation had this same idea, and in 1983, the section of highway affected by SCP-973 was demolished, in an attempt to stop it from manifesting. This attempt failed, though. All this led to was SCP-973 changing its location, where it immediately began engaging in the same deadly behavior. Numerous attempts have also been made to try and capture both 973-1 and -2. In one such event, several teams of SCP Foundation containment specialists were dispatched to its section of highway with the mission to subdue and contain the anomaly. After multiple attempts to get SCP-973 to appear by driving down the highway at various speeds, a car carrying several agents was finally successful, and they spotted the flashing red and blue lights of 973-1 behind them as the message telling them to run began playing over the radio. With no further warnings, the anomalous police car closed in on them, even faster than the agents were expecting, and immediately began ramming into their car. A van filled with additional containment specialists was dispatched to the area to help, and when they reached the area that the GPS tracker on the pursued car led them to, they found that they were too late. SCP-973 had pushed the agent's car far off the road and was ruthlessly tearing their bodies apart. The arriving containment team immediately began firing on 973 in an attempt to save their fellow Foundation agents. The team's weapons appeared to cause some injuries to 973-2, showing that it is perhaps vulnerable to lasting damage just like the 973-1 vehicle is. In a post-mission interview, one of the agents described SCP-973's new appearance. His eyes were red, and his mouth, it was just a black hole. No teeth, no tongue, just a hole. No other reports would come from this incident, though, as this agent was the only survivor. SCP-973 killed the other 9 agents and fled the scene. While it is believed that the Foundation team was able to wound the anomalous creature, it was neither contained nor incapacitated in any real sense, and the next report of a 973 incident occurred just 9 days later. SCP-973's ability to seemingly appear at a new location and the difficulty it has shown in being contained has gotten it a well-earned Euclid classification. The roughly 60 kilometers of highway on which it is known to appear is under satellite surveillance at all times, and all traffic between 10 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. is diverted along a non-highway detour route, by force if necessary. Unfortunately for the SCP Foundation and the general highway-using populace, these security protocols have necessitated frequent updates, because while the area that SCP-973 engages in its predatory behavior on is well known, both the time of day during which it will appear and the area it seems to affect are expanding.
It's late at night, and you're driving down a desolate stretch of highway somewhere in New Mexico. There's nothing out here except for you, your car, and the road. What you don't know is that you're about to encounter something. Something terrifying. There's no moon, and the sky is pitch black. Your own car is barely lighting up the dark road ahead of you. Just then, you spot something in your rearview mirror. It's a pair of headlights. There's nothing too strange about them, except that they are especially bright. Your eyes are so adjusted to the darkness that you have to look away. When you glance in the mirror again, you see that they're closer. Much closer. They must be going awfully fast. You don't know why, but something about the car behind you makes you feel uneasy. There's something off. You speed up a little. Maybe you can keep some distance from them, but the lights keep getting closer. So you speed up a little more. Still, they gain on you, growing bigger and bigger in your rearview mirror. You're getting nervous. They look like they are barreling right towards you. You floor it. The lights are able to keep up easily, though, and now they're right on your tail. No matter how fast you go, they stay right behind you. The lights are so bright and close that they're almost blinding. You're in a full-blown panic. What is going on? Now the lights are swerving back and forth behind you. What do they want? You take a sharp turn without indicating, but they follow you without difficulty. You keep your foot smashed down on the accelerator. Your engine is screaming, but they just get closer and closer. They're right on your bumper. The bright white lights burn your eyes so bad that you swat at the rearview mirror to point it down. You look up just in time to see the deer standing in the middle of the road. You slam on your brakes as hard as you can. Your tires squeal loudly in the night, and you brace yourself to both hit the deer and get rear-ended from behind. You stop inches from the deer as something incredible happens. The two headlights seem to split, passing by you on either side of your car. You and the deer lock eyes for a split second as if you're both thinking, "What was that?" before the deer hops away into the night. You don't know what's happening, but you're not going to wait around to find out. You throw the car in reverse and hit the gas before whipping it around 180 degrees. You can't remember how far the last town was, but there's no chance you're going in the direction of those lights.
You drive as fast as you can, checking your mirror constantly to see if anything is behind you. Nothing. Just darkness. Maybe you're finally safe. No, they're right in front of you. The lights somehow appear out of nowhere right in front of your car. You turn the wheel hard to avoid a head-on collision and you go flying off the road, smashing your head against the window as the car goes flipping and rolling and tumbling. The car comes to a stop 100 feet off the road, upside down, with a lone blinking turn signal dimly lighting up the surrounding field. A single headlight approaches the car, but it's not moving like a vehicle. It's moving like an animal. You're concussed from the accident, and your vision is starting to fade. The last thing you see is a second light approaching. The next morning, the local sheriff is investigating the scene of a single car accident. Curiously, there's no body, just a few scraps of clothing and a pair of tennis shoes sitting neatly in the upside-down roof of the car. Strangest, though, are the childlike handprints all over the dirty car door. The sheriff doesn't know what to think. What the sheriff doesn't know is that he has just come upon the aftermath of an SCP-745 attack, a strange and mysterious creature known as the Headlights. SCP-745 is the classification the SCP Foundation has given to a bipedal, nocturnal predator, whose hunting grounds are an abandoned stretch of highway in northern New Mexico. SCP-745's most distinctive feature, by far, is its head, the top of which is a bloated sack of translucent skin. There are no visible sensory organs present on the head, nor does it appear to have a solid skull, and the creature's brain can be directly seen through the semi-transparent skin, which is covered in a web of bioluminescent organs. These organs are capable of producing a steady output of light that's been measured between 1400 to 3200 lumens, which is the equivalent of bright xenon gas headlights. The entity has been observed to have the ability to change the color of this light, as well as flash it in specific patterns. It is theorized that it engages in this behavior as a way to defend itself, and potentially may also use it as a way to communicate with other members of its species. The rest of SCP-745's body is covered in skin that is a deep, dark, black color that almost seems to absorb light. This quality, when paired with their blindingly bright head protrusion, gives the appearance of a floating point of light in the darkness. Because SCP-745 entities hunt almost exclusively in pairs, with their preferred hunting grounds being remote sections of highway, they are easily mistaken for oncoming or approaching headlights. Two SCP-745 entities are able to move together in perfect synchronicity, running in tandem at speeds up to 180 kilometers per hour. Together, they will target lone vehicles that they spot on the highway, and will begin to chase or run straight towards them, giving the unlucky driver the impression that a fast-moving car is rapidly approaching them. After they near the targeted car, they will attempt to stop it by any means necessary, whether by simply forcing the driver to pull over out of fear, or by running them off the road completely. Once their prey has stopped, crashed, or become otherwise incapacitated, the pair will stop moving together and approach the car separately to directly assault and then consume the vehicle's occupants. Next to no remains are left following an attack, save for a few scraps of clothing and the victim's shoes. Other than the damage sustained during the accident, there is never any other sign of struggle or forced entry, with the only other evidence left at the scene being the childlike handprints from SCP-745's small front paws. Strangely, analysis of SCP-745's genetic structure has revealed that unlike humans, they are not a carbon-based life form, meaning it is unlikely then that they are able to derive any nutrition from the consuming of human flesh. It is theorized then that they may be hunting solely for sport or some other form of perverse enjoyment. This question remains unanswered, as currently there are no recorded observations of SCP-745 feeding in the wild, as successful attacks have never left any witnesses, and specimens captured by the SCP Foundation refuse to eat it all. No lairs, nests, or other refuge of SCP-745 has ever been found, nor has the Foundation located any breeding grounds or young examples of the entity. It's unknown how or if they reproduce, or when they may have first appeared. What is known is that they had established a wide hunting territory across the American Southwest until Foundation teams began a program to thin their numbers in the 1960s. The effort appears to have been successful so far, and all recent sightings of SCP-745 have been limited to a specific stretch of highway in northern New Mexico. SCP-745 has been classified as Euclid and in order to limit potential exposure to civilians, the Foundation has purchased the land surrounding the highway, with traffic being redirected to other roads. Foundation security teams disguised as highway patrol officers are to remove any trespassers or lost travelers who accidentally find themselves on the dangerous stretch of highway. The security teams are also tasked with attempting to capture any instances of SCP-745 that they can, and any recovered creatures, live or dead, are to be loaded into Class 3 BCU storage containers and transferred to Site-17 for further study. Containment procedures that are able to preserve living specimens are still being researched, and currently, no examples of SCP-745 have survived for more than a week in captivity. However, seeing as there have been no new sightings of SCP-745 outside of the isolated and monitored stretch of highway, and all reports of phantom lights elsewhere in the country have not pointed to evidence of additional SCP-745 outbreaks, they are considered to be effectively contained.
The guerrilla soldiers fire their rifles blindly into the jungle. They don't know what exactly they're shooting at, but something is out there among the trees, something they can't see, something that's killing them. One of the young soldiers, barely more than a boy, stops to reload. As he pulls the magazine from his rifle, a blur passes by. The soldier next to him suddenly drops to his knees, clutching his neck, blood pouring out between his fingers. A hand grasps the boy's shoulder, and he spins around, nearly opening fire on his commander. The older man tells him they've got to go, and the boy joins a small group of soldiers who start running through the jungle, trying to get away from whatever this thing is. As they run, there's another flash of movement, and one of the soldiers is pulled into the trees. He can hear his screams mixed with the otherworldly shrieks, but there's nothing they can do. It's already too late for him. Another soldier disappears into the trees with a blur. It's just him and the commander now. They emerge from the jungle into a clearing that contains a small abandoned farm. The commander motions for them to head towards the old farmhouse, and the two take cover around the corner of the home. They crouch with their guns ready, peeking around the corner, looking for any sign of the monster that's killed so many of their comrades. The boy wants to know what they should do. He opens his mouth to ask the commander, but he puts a finger to his lips and motions for the boy to keep watching. The boy peeks around the corner of the house, but he doesn't see anything emerging from the tree line. It's quiet, until the commander begins to scream. The boy turns to see a point forming on his chest. It's a black circle. No, not black, something darker. It's like it is the absence of any and all light. The commander screams louder as the point of darkness grows. The commander's screams fade out, even as it looks like he continues to yell. The boy watches as the commander seems to be collapsing in, sucked into the dark orb in his chest. The commander's body folds in on itself, growing smaller and smaller, until it disappears completely into the black hole, which vanishes along with him. The boy doesn't know what he just saw, but he doesn't have time to think, because emerging from the forest is the creature. The boy has never seen anything like it, and runs into the farmhouse. He locks the door and pushes the old kitchen table in front of it, trying to barricade it as best he can. He looks around and spots a bed against the wall. It's the best hiding spot he can find, so he runs and slides under the bed, pulling himself as close to the wall as he can. The boy watches and waits, unsure of what he should do. It's quiet. There's no more screaming of soldiers being killed or any more of those guttural animal-like squeals. Maybe it decided to go back to wherever it came from. The boy doesn't dare come out from under the bed, though. As he watches the door, waiting for something to burst through, he sees something else. Another of those black points appears in the middle of the room. It looks like it bends the light around it, distorting the room nearby. The boy watches from under the bed as out of the point, a thin black limb emerges. First one, then another. He can see its strange pointed legs with no feet standing just in front of the bed now. With a high-pitched cry, the creature effortlessly tosses the bed aside. The boy is left exposed, cowering against the wall. The creature screams, opening its wide mouth that seems to split its eyeless face in two, revealing 2 rows of jagged teeth. The boy screams back, crying in fear, and sees that the creature isn't eyeless after all. Inside its grotesque mouth, a milky blue ball appears. There's no iris, but the boy knows whatever this thing is, it's looking at him. The boy feels his chest grow tight. He looks down to see that one of the black points is forming on his chest. He can feel himself being squeezed and crushed, pulled down into this singular point. All noises, including his screams, disappear as he is pulled into this soundless void. But then he hears something again. He looks up to see that the creature is being riddled with bullets.
It turns to escape and bursts through the wall of the farmhouse. The dark orb on the boy vanishes, and he sees, standing in the doorway, his friend and savior. He clutches his bleeding throat with one hand, holding his rifle in the other. The boy rushes to him as he collapses to the floor. Blood is pouring out of his neck, and he can no longer speak. But he dies knowing he saved his young friend. The boy starts to feel very tired, and he sits down next to his dead hero. He's all alone now, his entire group of freedom fighters now wiped out by this demon. The boy feels nauseous and dizzy. He coughs into his hand and looks down to see that it's covered in his own blood. A group of boys run down a jungle path, laughing and playing, when they suddenly stop and grow quiet. There's something up ahead of them. It's a man lying on the side of the road. The boys look scared, unsure if they should check it out. But then the smallest of all of them emerges from the group and bravely marches up to the man. Not wanting to let the youngest of their friends make them look like cowards, the rest of the boys soon follow. The man on the side of the road is moaning and looks to be in pain. As they get closer, they can see that he must have been in a terrible accident. His skin is gray, and it looks like his long, thin arms only have 3 fingers. What should they do? The small boy picks up a stick and reaches out with it to poke the man, not wanting to touch him with his own hands. But before he can, the man rolls over, opening his mouth with a horrible shriek to reveal the glassy blue eye inside as the boys turn and run, hands over their ears. Several weeks later, the small Guatemalan town holds a meeting. A crowd of people in the room are angrily yelling at the mayor, who stands at a podium, demanding answers from him about what happened to their dead or missing loved ones. A series of photos are hung on the wall behind the mayor in remembrance of those who have disappeared into the forest or mysteriously died from a rapid illness, including the brave young boy. One man shouts at the mayor, wanting to know where his daughter was. Another asks how her healthy husband could drop dead from an illness after being perfectly healthy only days before. The mayor tries to calm the frustrated townspeople, telling them that he knows there have been rumors of a demon out in the forest, but that's all they are, rumors. The mayor warns them, though, that something is out there, though he doesn't know what. There is an animal or man that is making people sick. It may also be hunting people. Neither he nor the police know exactly what is going on. But there is good news. A group of men have come to help them. The mayor points towards a stern-looking man in a military uniform who is standing with a small group of other soldiers and a scientist off to the side of the stage. The mayor explains that this man, General Machoy, is from America, and that he's going to help them. The crowd doesn't cheer in the way that the mayor seems to have expected, but they at least stop their yelling as the general steps to the podium and thanks the mayor for the introduction. The general looks over the crowd who are waiting and hungry for answers about the monster that's suddenly begun plaguing their town. He tells them that it is true that he's been sent here by the US government in order to investigate what's been happening and stop whatever threat is out there in the jungle by any means necessary. He can't promise that he'll be able to bring back any of their missing loved ones, but he can at least prevent whatever this is from taking any more. He then gestures to the rest of his group and tells the crowd that the men he has brought with him have been specially trained to deal with this exact type of situation, and that they don't need to worry any longer. The only thing everyone needs to do is stay out of their way, and all will be taken care of. With that, he walks off the stage as the crowd erupts into more shouting. General Machoy stops at the scientists waiting next to the stage. "Well, Dr. Ketter, what do you think?" The scientist adjusts his glasses and answers, "This is what we've been preparing for. The overseers kept telling us this day would come. It looks like it finally has." The group of soldiers led by General Machoy make their way through the dense forest. Dr. Ketter is just ahead of them, using a Geiger counter to follow the creature, the audible clicks of the radioactive entity telling him which way it came. They track the source of the radiation to a clearing in the jungle where a small village once stood. Most of the buildings are overgrown with plants and thick vines, but with it growing dark, this seems as safe a place as they will find to make their camp for the night. The soldiers fan out to search what's left of the town as Dr. Ketter continues looking around for where the radioactive trail might lead them next. As General Machoy is checking out one of the many dark old buildings, one of the older soldiers cries out, "Hey General, it looks like this generator still works." With the sound of an old diesel motor coming to life, lights in the village suddenly flicker on. They now have fortifications and light. Though he'd never admit it, General Machoy was feeling nervous about spending the night in the jungle, but now at least some of those nerves were being washed away by the old flickering yellow lights. Later that night, the general is questioning Dr. Ketter on where the creature went. Dr. Ketter is confused, though. His readings showed high traces of radiation leading into this village. The creature came here, he was sure of it, but now he can't figure out where it went. It's as if it came into the village and then simply vanished. Outside, one of the soldiers on watch tells the rest of the group who are sitting around a fire to shut up, that he thinks he saw something in the woods. Everyone immediately springs into action, taking defensive positions and aiming their rifles into the dark tree line. "There it is again," he says, as a flash of darkness moves just beyond the clearing. "No, it's over here," says another soldier on the opposite side. How could the creature be moving so fast around them? Are there multiple of whatever this is out there? The soldiers form a circle to make sure that the thing can't get behind them. What they can't see is the point of darkness forming behind all of their backs, and the thin, pointed legs stepping out of it. The general's radio comes to life. "I think we've got something out here, But his message is cut off by screams and the sound of gunfire. General Machoy tells Dr. Ketter to stay inside and runs out of the building, where he finally gets a glimpse of the demon that they've been tracking. The tall, thin creature is massacring his squad. It dashes between them at an inhuman speed, using its three-fingered hands to rip the limbs off of some soldiers and slash at others with its razor-sharp claws, opening up their necks or disemboweling them before moving on to the next. The general fires his rifle at the creature and misses, but it's enough to get it to retreat. General Machoy runs back inside the building where Dr. Ketter is waiting. "What was it? What did you see out there?" The general doesn't know how to begin describing the monster that just killed all of his men. It's like nothing he's ever seen before, and something that no amount of training could prepare him for. As the two men ponder what to do next, the Geiger counter on the table suddenly starts to click, softly at first, but then more and more, as if a huge amount of radiation has suddenly flooded the room. The general grabs the doctor and drags him out, leaping out of the building just before it collapses in on itself, disappearing into the micro-singularity that formed inside. The two men look up to see it standing right in front of them, its huge mouth open to reveal its glassy blue eye. "Look out!" Dr. Ketter cries, but he isn't talking about the demon as he and the general roll to the side, just avoiding the power line that has been cut loose by the destroyed building. The power line hits the ground and immediately begins to spark, sending out bright pulses of white electrical light. The creature cries out with a gut-wrenching scream and collapses to the ground, huddling up into a ball as it tries to cover up its mouth with its thin arms. "Is it the electricity?" the general asks, confused about what suddenly stopped the killer's rampage. But Dr. Ketter realizes it isn't the sparking power line that the creature has been immobilized by, it's the flashing lights. The general doesn't wait for his answer, though, and fires the weighted net from his gun, trapping the howling creature. Dr. Ketter examines the creature at the Field Research Center that has been set up several miles from the village. A strobe light has been affixed to the inside of the creature's cage, but even when the doctor turns the light off, the grayish-brown skinned entity still remains curled up in a ball on the floor. The doctor wonders if perhaps the creature is hungry, but it shows no interest in any of the various meats, fruits, and vegetables they've presented to it. The doctor stands in the doorway of the tent that has been set up to house the creature's cage and gives an update to General Machoy, who is anxious to get the creature moved to the United States and a more secure containment environment. Dr. Ketter stresses that he fears the journey might kill this creature, though, and put an end to the incredible research and testing they can perform on this amazing living specimen. The general turns to leave, but stops to salute the body of one of his soldiers being carried by on a stretcher. Dr. Ketter himself turns to go back to his research when he notices something. The creature's mouth is ever so slightly open. Dr. Ketter has yet another idea. That night, Dr. Ketter enters the temporary morgue and takes a severed arm from one of the dead soldiers. Back in the research tent, he presents the arm to the creature, sliding it through the cage bars. The creature doesn't react, but Dr. Ketter continues to watch and wait. After a time, the creature finally stirs. It's the first time he has seen it move since it was captured. The creature reaches out with its long three-fingered hand and grabs the arm before starting to feed on it. "You like that, don't you?" Dr. Ketter asks, and, bizarrely, the creature seems to respond, giving an almost baby-like coo. "There's lots more of that if you behave. All I want is to study you, learn how you work." The creature continues to feed, starting to crunch on the bones now that all of the meat is gone. "Yes, I believe you'll be good," the doctor says as he approaches the cage. "You're going to make me world famous. Soon, everyone will know the name Herman Ketter." The creature's hand shoots out from between the bars so quickly he never even saw it. Dr. Ketter starts to scream as it grasps and claws at him. A soldier standing guard outside runs in, but a black point of light immediately appears on his torso, causing him to fold in on himself into the singularity. The creature drops the bloody Dr. Ketter to the floor, who reaches for the emergency strobe light activation button as another singularity opens up inside of the cage. The creature appears to willfully step into it before emerging out of another just outside of the bars. More soldiers rush into the tent in time to see the creature feeding on the still-living Dr. Ketter. One presses the button to activate the high-powered strobe lights, which cause the creature to start screaming and thrashing about, trying to escape the flashing lights. Multiple nets are fired onto the creature, pinning it to the ground as its screams slowly fade back to whimpers. On Overseer orders, the creature is moved to ADRX-19, a secure base located somewhere in North America. The site's director gives a presentation to a group and explains that thanks to the work of the late Dr. Ketter, they now know that the creature exhibits signs of fear and sickness when in the presence of strobing lights, and that it is unable to produce the microsingularities that it uses for defense and teleportation when it is in this sickened state. When healthy, though, the creature is extremely dangerous thanks to its superhuman speed, strength, and cunning. It was also discovered that it is unable to teleport through lead, which its new containment cell has been lined with, and extreme security procedures have been implemented, including the installation of a reinforced steel blast door and constant patrols of the outside of the cell by armed guards who are equipped with high-powered strobe lights. The site director leaves the room and the overseers discuss the fate of the creature, which has been given the designation number 86243AR-001, though most have taken to calling it simply 001. One of the overseers argues that the creature must be secured and contained in order to protect humanity. Who knows how many more of these might be out there? They now know that the rumors of these types of entities aren't merely isolated events, and that there could be countless more of these anomalies, hundreds, maybe even thousands. The rest of the overseers unanimously agree. One of them picks up the report that was left behind by the site director. Redact this report immediately and start a new document archive. This is only the prototype. I have the feeling there will be many more of these.
The young couple held hands as they walked through the forest, the only light coming from the full moon which streamed down between the branches.
The young woman is riveted by her friend's story. She's never been a fan of ghost stories. She scares too easily, but her friends insisted.
But what they didn't know was that there was something else out there in the forest. Something watching them.
The young woman can't help but look around, scanning the forest to see if there's anything out there watching her. But it's too dark to see anything past the dim ring of light cast by the campfire.
Just then, something emerged from the forest. The couple had no idea that it was just feet behind them, matching them step for step. Slowly, it began to reach out towards them.
"What was it?" the young woman instinctually asked.
It was the Gashadokuro.
The young woman screams in fear as she is grabbed from behind by a skeleton. But of course, the laughing of her friends clues her in immediately that this is not a real Gashadokuro. It's just her stupid friend in a mask. No one can contain their laughter. Even the young woman has to laugh a little. As her friend takes off his cheap skull mask, she playfully hits him in the arm.
"You jerk! You should have seen the look on your..."
The gigantic shrieking skeleton leaps from the woods and picks up the young man, shoving him straight into his mouth and consuming him, the boy crying out as his bones are snapped between its enormous jaws. Everyone screams and turns to run, but another colossal skeleton emerges from the forest, picking up two of the group, one in each hand, before smashing them together over and over, leaving nothing but a tenderized pile of flesh between its bony fingers that it then begins to devour. The young woman doesn't know what to do. She's petrified with fear, unable to move or even think. She's grabbed from behind and turns to see her friend who is telling the story. "Come on, we have to go." She still doesn't move. She can't tear herself away from watching the horror that's playing out in front of her. But he grabs her hand and forcefully pulls her into the forest behind him. As they run through the woods, they can hear the sounds of their friends being eaten by the enormous skeletons. There's nothing they can do to help them, though. All they can do is run. The two sprint as fast as they can through the thick, dark forest, jumping over fallen trees, hoping that there's solid ground on the other side. The young woman's foot catches in a root, and she falls hard to the ground. Her friend stops and quickly comes back. As he is helping her stand up out of the mud, they both notice something. A sound. The heavy thuds of another giant skeleton. And it's getting closer to them. "Come on, we have to keep going!" With a loud shriek, a huge bony hand emerges from the forest and grabs the young man. The young woman watches as he is lifted 100 feet into the air and stuffed whole into the gargantuan skeleton's mouth. She steps slowly backwards, knowing that she will soon meet the same fate, until the earth disappears beneath her feet. She tumbles down the hillside, somersaulting end over end, crashing through the brush on the hillside until dropping over an embankment. If the fall down the hill knocked her out,
and the drop over the embankment was enough to wake her back up. Her wits come back just enough for her to roll under the embankment's ledge, and not a moment too soon. She huddles under the ledge and watches as the two skeletons stride over her hiding place and continue on deeper into the forest. She listens until the sounds of their thudding steps disappear. She doesn't know what to do. Should she try to get back to the campsite and see if any of her friends are still alive? If they are, they might need her help. But what if there are more of these things out there? What if they come back, looking for her? Her mind races, unsure of what to do, and she has trouble thinking clearly. Her ears are ringing from her tumble down the hillside, and her teeth audibly chatter in fear. As she debates her next move, trying to make sense of the nightmare she's found herself in, she suddenly notices something. A shadow cast by the moonlight begins to grow on the ground in front of her. That's when she realizes something else. It's not her teeth that are chattering. The sound is coming from somewhere else. She stands up and turns around to see a huge skull slowly rising up behind her. The giant skeleton, this one even bigger than the others, reaches out towards her. The girl closes her eyes, preparing to meet her fate as the skeleton starts to shriek. But it's a different kind of sound. She opens her eyes and is almost blinded by the intense white light on the skeleton's face. It sounds like it is shrieking in pain from the light being cast on it, and she's forced to turn away and shield her eyes. As she does so, she sees the source of light. It's a man in a uniform. He looks like some sort of tactical police officer, but instead of a gun, he's holding an enormous flashlight that he's pointing at the skeleton. More men who are dressed just the same emerge from the woods, blasting the skeleton with more light. It continues shrieking but seems helpless to do anything. She watches as the skeleton seems to lose its form, slowly disintegrating in the light, until eventually it disappears completely. Later, the young woman is sitting in the back of a van with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. One of the policemen, at least she thinks he must be a policeman, brings her a hot drink. She still can't believe what she saw that night. The monstrous creatures that killed and ate her friends. It felt like it wasn't real, like she was watching a movie play out. Were those Gashadokuro? She asks. A man in a white lab coat looks up from a nearby table where he had been working on something. She thinks he must be a doctor of some kind. Yes, he tells her, or something similar to them. Maybe they inspired the myth of the Gashadokuro. Maybe the myth inspired them. We simply don't know. She asks, "All my friends are dead," he interjects. "I know this is hard for you. Getting chased by giant anomalous skeletons and watching your friends eaten alive would be tough for anyone to deal with." The young woman starts to sob, the weight of the moment finally hitting her. "But I have some good news," he tells her. She sniffs and looks up at the doctor. "Believe it or not, I've seen this thing happen a lot. And you don't have to worry, because you're not going to remember any of this." "Ouch!" the young woman cries, and looks down to see that he has jabbed her in the thigh with a syringe. She tries to push him away, but she's already feeling weak and disoriented. She sways a little before her eyes shut, and she passes out. The young woman wakes in the cheery morning light of her own bedroom. She yawns and stretches, the strange dream about skeletons in the forest already drifting from her mind. Konnichiwa, I'm Dr. Bob, and today's file is a terrifying anomalous entity referred to in Japan as the Gashadokuro, but known by the SCP Foundation as SCP-2863, the Starving Skeletons. SCP-2863 is not just one, but an entire population of entities that resemble gigantic human skeletons. These enormous bony creatures' size can vary, but on average they are approximately 30 meters tall. While their exact number is unknown, over 200 separate individual instances have been identified and cataloged, with each having distinctive markings, such as their bones having different types of damage or burn marks present. SCP-2863 instances are currently found exclusively in Japan, where they will appear only after sunset. It is still unknown if the skeletons are sapient, though they do appear sentient as they engage in their primary behavior of hunting down and consuming humans. Despite their enormous size, they are capable of moving very quietly when they want to, though there have been reports from survivors of their appearance being preceded by a rattling-like sound, which may be their own teeth or giant bones hitting against each other. Once they have caught a human, they will immediately devour them, with the human's blood appearing to be absorbed directly into their bones, since they lack any digestive organs. It is unknown if they require the blood of humans for sustenance, or if their predatory behavior is motivated by something else. Monitoring and control of SCP-2863 instances was previously the responsibility of the Imperial Japanese Anomalous Matters Examination Agency. The IJAMEA, which as the name suggests, was Imperial Japan's answer to the SCP Foundation, tasked with investigating the strange anomalies within their own borders for the benefit of the Empire.
Several of the IJA-MEA agents who had been investigating the Gashadokuro at the end of World War II transferred to the SCP Foundation when the Anomalous Matters Examination Agency was disbanded, and continued their work on the anomaly. They also provided their original files on the anomaly, which gave the Foundation their first information on the giant anomalous skeletons. According to the IJA-MEA's translated file, Gashadokuro are created by mass death, by the concentrated suffering of hundreds. While the Gashadokuro will eventually fade, they remain for centuries after their creation, lingering until their sorrow has diffused and faded. There is no way to hasten this process. The IJA-MEA file also explained that while conventional weaponry is useless against the anomalous skeletons, light can be used to banish the creatures, and either natural daylight or man-made light will suffice. When exposed to light, the skeletons will start to lose their corporeal form until they fade away completely. This doesn't kill instances of SCP-2863, though. It only temporarily neutralizes them, and appearances of the same instance will often be reported the very next night. Just as the IJA-MEA had noted in their file, the SCP Foundation also made the connection between SCP-2863 and locations of mass suffering. While Imperial Japan's Anomalous Investigation Unit identified 203 instances of SCP-2863, the Foundation has since become aware of 3 others, each of which were found at sites connected to death and destruction. The first new instance was found near Nanjing, China, the location of an especially brutal massacre during the Second World War that may have resulted in as many as 300,000 deaths. It's believed that the entity first appeared in this location in 1938, just after the massacre, while the city was still under the control of Imperial Japan. This has led some to speculate that the locations where Gashadokuro appear are inherently tied to the borders of Japan as a nation and have fluctuated with geopolitical changes. The second was discovered several kilometers from Fukuoka City in Japan, a city that saw heavy firebombing by Allied forces during the war. The third was identified in 2011 in the Tohoku region of Japan, which is where the Fukushima nuclear disaster occurred. Each of these new instances appeared to bear injuries consistent with someone who suffered through the nearby tragedies, with the first showing evidence of crushed bones, the second appearing to have suffered intense burning, and the third missing teeth, which is common in cases of extreme radiation poisoning. These specific injuries add further evidence of the connection the Gashadokuro may have to human misery. The impermanent nature of SCP-2863 and their ability to manifest even after being neutralized has made long-term containment of this anomaly all but impossible, and they have been classified as Keter. In the event that an instance is spotted, Mobile Task Force Omicron-3 is dispatched to the area, where they will attempt to neutralize the entity through the use of high-powered floodlights. Any civilians who are exposed to SCP-2863 and survive are given Class A amnestics so that they can hopefully move on with their lives and forget their horrifying encounter with the starving skeletons. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-966 Sleep Killer, for another anomaly who has decided to make humans its preferred prey. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.